This is what we're in for today. Welcome to those of you joining us on Eurosport World as well. Some fearsome climbs today. 55 points available still in the mountains classification. Stefano Pirazzi trying to make his presence felt yesterday in that competition. The stage today from Caldes Val di Sol over the Tonale, the Aprica, the Taglio, the Giro, up to Mortirolo and eventually up the Passo di Stelvio. This is what it looks like. Ooh, that's nasty, is it not? "36 ramps of the Stelvio, 36 bends await them. And this is the run out this morning at 10:26. Local time out of the start at Caldes Val di Sol. Over 200 kilometers to get through today, and already some riders trying to make their presence felt in a breakaway. Small group of riders going away, including Serpa. This is Roman Kreuziger once again on the attack. And the Navadauskas leading the peloton at the moment. So Kreuziger, feeling as though he's in really good shape and still has something to prove. He said in the press conference afterwards, after his win yesterday, that even after yesterday's win, the indignity of being dropped on the Passo di Gavia was something he won't be able to live down. So he's feeling extremely bad about that one. This is Rabottini taking the points on the Passo di Tonale. Not going to give in easily, Rabottini. He's in the break, and it was meant to be the day for Stefano Pirazzi to have another go again, but Rabottini takes 9 points on the Tonale. And at the front, everybody looking around, nervous today because it is a super difficult day with two massive passes still to go through. This is the third category Aprica climb, and Rabottini running through that as well, making further inroads into the mountains classification. So Rabottini taking another 5, total of 14 now. Pirazzi looks to be out of it at the moment. However, remember the big climbs of the day, the Mortirolo and the Passo di Stelvio, have between them 15 points and 21 points. So a lot of points available still. Taglio, and Rabottini takes the 5 there as well. So doing a very good job. And the two small Italian teams, Colnago and Farnese Vini, battling away for the mountains classification. Looks like to be Rabottini's day. Yes. Sandy Cassar giving out in the papers this morning about the tactics of Stefano Pirazzi yesterday. But hey, it's racing. And Cassar being pushed all the way by Pirazzi. So here we are with the live pictures in that group, including Rabottini up the road at 4 minutes and 57 seconds. And Colnago putting a man on the front along with Garmin Barracuda today. First time we've seen Garmin Barracuda really controlling the front of the race until since the start of the Giro d'Italia. Massive day today. Sean Kelly is beside me in the box, and it looks like Rabottini is not prepared to give up this mountains classification easily, but for the rest of them, a huge day in store.
Yes, well, a huge day, and what a day we have, what a final we have with the Mortirolo and then the Stelvio, of course, and altitude I think is going to be a big one. The Stelvio finish at 2,757 metres. It's, you know, a big altitude, and will that take effect? Looking on yesterday, the big favourites we see, you know, the strongest men, and Heidal looked to be really strong yesterday. I think the big point was he put the team in the front of the last climb and started making the pace. I was wondering, was it a bit of bluff? But it certainly was not bluff. We see him in the end, he was the stronger of the big favourites, and it looks like that he is the man, you know, in line to win this Giro. But today, as we've been hearing from some of the riders, this altitude can have affect a big effect on some riders, and that could be the case today for some of the big favourites.
Yeah, it's a huge day here in the Giro d'Italia. It's really gone right to the wire, hasn't it? Ryder Hejdal is the man everybody is looking at now to be the winner elect, but we've still got this huge day to come. Here's our breakaway riders. Steph Clement is at the front of the race. And Kreuziger, Rabotini in here, Serpa, Mathias Frank, Christian van der Velde. They're just keeping him up the road just in case. Rabotini has gained 19 points today in the early climbs of the route today. That means he's secured the Mountains classification jersey. The gap between himself and Stefano Perazzi at the start of the day was 65 points to Rabotini, 44 to Perazzi. Rabotini now has 84 points, and with a maximum of 55 available today, he's taken 19 of them. I think the likelihood is that he is going to keep that jersey, because he has to get to the end of the Giro d'Italia. A lot of people ask these questions. Do you get to hang on to it if you drop out of the race? No, you don't. Well, you get the jersey you've been awarded, obviously, on the day, but you don't get the title at the end of the race unless you finish the race. That's true of all the jersey competitions. And there is Matteo Rabotini. Not a hard day for him, but good work from Farnese Vini and this little rider here, taking maximum points so far on the early climbs of the day. The Passo de Tonali, that was the important one to get. Second category climb, the Aprica and the Terlio, both third category climbs. 5 points each for the third category climbs, 9 for the second category climb. Just out of interest, the Mortirolo has 15 points on offer, and the Cima Coppi prize at the top of the Stelvio, because it's the highest pass in the Giro d'Italia, has a special prize of 21 points available. No breakaway tactics then for Team Sky and for Mark Cavendish and his points jersey. It will be very hard for Mark to hang on to that points jersey now, because the main protagonists will be battling it out on the last climb of the day, and Joaquim Rodriguez, unless something dreadful befalls him, will be battling it out there. This morning, the gap between the two of them was 138 to Cavendish, 125 to Rodriguez. And the likelihood is that Rodriguez will overhaul him today. The only thing that Mark can do now is outperform him in the time trial, but it seems unlikely that the gap between the two of them will be enough. Best young rider is Rigoberto Urán, 2 minutes and 26 seconds ahead of Sergio Enyo, his teammate, 4:57 ahead of Brambilla. He was right at the end of his rope yesterday when he finished, Rigoberto Urán. But the important jersey today, everybody is looking at it. It's the pink jersey on the shoulders of Joaquim Rodriguez. He has a 17-second gap over Ryder Hejdal, and 1 minute and 39 seconds over Michele Scarponi. This is where they're heading up to, about 4 to 5 degrees at the finish here. Very cold indeed, and it's the altitude that will play a real part here. 2,757 meters is how high they are running up to today, and those riders are already at the end of their tether, will be gasping for air. Well, Euskaltel and Colnago now making some pace. Yesterday we saw Domenico Pozzovivo little bit distanced, Sean, and when he came over the line, he looked a little bit shell-shocked almost. No, I think perhaps he wanted to really perform yesterday and found himself up against men who were better than him.
Well, yes, he looked different to everybody else, let's say, because we could see everybody else was making faces trying to get to the line, but he just comes over and he seems to be, not really that suffering and not after going totally deep, but that's his style as well. We see him when when he's out in front as well, when he's really going for it. Surprising yesterday he did not go in the attack. Is he starting to suffer after 3 weeks racing, or maybe he's just waiting and having a real go today? I think we'll have to wait and see, but I think yesterday when things started to really heat up with the big favourites, we see Scarponi attacking. Pozzoviva did not react, so I think maybe he's suffering a bit. But today is a real climb for him. The gradient a bit more difficult, and that's where he has the advantage as well, because the small lightweight guy with the gradient, the bigger guys will suffer that bit more. But has he got anything left in the tank is the question.
Yes, that is the big question. There is Stefano Pirazzi. He's having to do his job in line here, Sean, with the rest of the Colnago boys. What did you make of his riding yesterday, Pirazzi?
Well, I thought he was riding okay yesterday. We did see at a moment with Sandy Cassar when he started to attack, so many kilometres out, I can't remember exactly, but it was the total wrong way to do it. He had to keep on riding in the group, and when he was with Cassar, keep riding, of course, as well. But Cassar said he wasn't giving it everything. He wasn't, really pushing on the front. When he came to the front, he was just coming over the top of Cassar and, not really contributing an awful lot. And Cassar, he was also talking there in the interviews. He said that he spoke to him. He said, look, what do you want here? And he said, well, I'm going for the mountain classification. Well, he said, okay. And Cassar did not contest the mountain classification point with him at all. So there was no problem there. He could have continued on to ride with Cassar. Cassar said he wasn't riding fully. I don't know what Pirazzi will say. But again, it was not to be for Sandy Cassar yesterday, but with Roman Cunego from Astana coming out of the bunch, with the two men from Omega Quick-Step, it wasn't going to last, and that was always going to be the problem. No matter how I think they rode out front, the two, they were going to get pulled back in that final climb. Being out there all day, freshmen getting out of the bunch, just too much, too strong for them in the final kilometres.
Steph Clement is the man at the front of the breakaway here. And it's nice to see Serpa out in a break again today. Jose Serpa. Ruhanu not in the squad anymore. He's featured on the Mortirolo in the past, but there's no place for Ruhanu left here in the Giro d'Italia. He went home yesterday. The men in the break are Matteo Bono from Lampre, lying over 2.5 hours behind the pink jersey. Romain Kreuziger at 12 minutes and 21 seconds is clearly they're not going to allow him to take 12 minutes back, but he's after another stage today. Smarting terribly, I think, from cracking. Rabottini we've already seen. Runner disqualified by the jury here. Guardini, Velasco, Roland and Hunter. That's interesting. And I wonder why that is. Presuming that is today. Another riders in the breakaway. Jose Serpa we've just mentioned. We're just catching up with them and ourselves, actually. 4:20 is the gap. Matthias Frank, the Swiss rider from BMC, has made it into the break today. Christian van der Velde. What's the score with van der Velde, Sean? Surely he must be being sent up the road to just provide some sort of springboard if needed later on for his team leader, rider Heidstall.
Yes, I would say that's the tactic. Put a man out there on the break, and you have him there in the later stages, and it's always a tactic that we see in the final of a race. with some of the guys who are up in the general classification. They do that, and if the rider maybe is a little bit worried about getting through some of the earlier climbs, and the Mortirola, if there's a big attack there, a big battle of the big favourites, maybe Garmin feels that have a man out front, and if he's over that one, he can be a big help to his lead in the team, and the man up there very much in the general classification, Ryder Heisler.
Steph Clements in another break. Good for him to get in there. Alberto Losada. So presumably the same tactic is applicable to the man from Katusha up here as well. We know that Losada is a good climber.
Yes, I think when there's a big group of riders going away, well then you just put a man in it, and you have him up there for later, and it's easy to stop a guy out front if he's 3 minutes, 6 minutes out front, and you need him for some reason back in the peloton. It's so easy just to get him to slow up, really slow down, and you can stop a guy on the road for a while if he's a long way ahead if you need him real urgently. So it's always a plus to have a guy out in front, and it gives a little bit of security for the team leader that he's not going to be alone, maybe going into the final. So it's always it's something we've always seen before.
Full rundown of the breakaway then. It's Matteo Bono from Lampre, Serpa of Androni, Kreuziger of Astana, only at 12 minutes and 21 seconds in yesterday's victor. Tez Frank of BMC, Rabotini, who's taken the maximum points so far in the climbs today, and pretty much secured that mountains classification jersey. It's already on his shoulders. Christian van der Velde of Garmin Barracuda, there for his team leader Ryder Herjdahl a little bit later on. Alberto Losada from Katusha, likewise there for Joaquim Rodriguez, and Damiano Cunego of Liquigas in the breakaway, number 125, again in the job for Ivan Basso. So we can see that the big protagonists are already teeing up for a battle. Branislav Samalov of Movistar, Steph Clements and Tom Schlachter, both from Rabobank, and Matteo Carrara, the opportunist himself, from Vacances Soleil. And there is Vacances Soleil's Carrara just ahead of Romain Kreuziger, but Clement setting pace on the front, and Colnago setting the pace on the front of the peloton. Well, if proof were needed, Sean, that they still aren't finished yet, they want to do something today, it's the fact that Colnago are riding on the front. Is it? I mean, is it for Pozzovivo, and is it for the outside possibility that we might get Perazzi doing something in the end? But there he is in the line doing his job for Pozzovivo.
Yes, I think it must be for Pozzovivo, because now the situation in the mountain classification, it's going to be real difficult for Perazzi. If you don't get into the break in the earlier part of the day, well then it's difficult for Perazzi to pick up any points later on as we go into the final, because the race is going to get very aggressive when we get to the climb of the Mortirola. It's hard to see Perazzi taking any points, so he's missed his chance here. Getting into the breakaway was the opportunity for him, and I think from the Mortirola it's going to be full on that climb, and it looks like that the Pozzovivo is the man, and they probably think that, and they have every right to be on the Stelvio. Such a long climb, 22 kilometers, the gradient real difficult. That's somewhere where Pozzovivo can do a lot of damage if he's feeling okay. He's got some energy left today. Well, he should be able to do a performance there.
Yeah, and he's still within shouting distance, isn't he, really? Domenico Pozzovivo is at 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and we mentioned it before, Sean, but he's still close enough, if he's on a very good day, to take 3 minutes out of the top riders on a climb like the Stelvio. It's difficult to see considering what he went through yesterday, but you can never tell. It's the Giro d'Italia, and it's been swings and roundabouts all the way. 86 kilometers to go in this, the final massive showdown day in the mountains for the Giro d'Italia. Steph Clemens setting a good pace on the front. He's got Tom Schlachter in the break here as well with him. He's been climbing well. Maybe he feels on a good day today, trying to rescue something from this, or trying to get something more from this. It's like maybe he's going to go for the glory at the end. Clemens is certainly setting a decent pace. 85 kilometres to go. 4 riders have been excluded or taken out, thrown off basically, the Giro d'Italia today by the commissaires, the officials. Guardini, Hunter, Velasco and Rolla. And that is actually, that's not abandoned, and that's not did not start. That's they have been ejected from the tour by the commissaires. My guess is, Sean, that they are probably hanging on a car somewhere.
Well,
you don't know, but
it's very possible. If you're on the first climb of today, of course, and it was the Tonale, a difficult climb if you're really suffering and you're at the end of your energies. Well, then you can start having difficulty, and if you're totally behind, sometimes the riders, they just try everything to continue on the race, and with the penultimate stage getting this far, they all want to finish, they don't want to give in. So is it just that they were hanging from the vehicles, or maybe pacing also? Sometimes when they're behind there, they get behind the car for a time, and if the commissaires call to the car to get out and not continue on doing it, if you push it too much, well then you can get thrown off the race very easily. So it has to be something like that, pacing or taking a pull from a car.
Yep. I would suggest, given that Hunter had a crash yesterday and he has been riding particularly strongly, Roland has had a couple of crashes. He's a heavy rouleur. Guardini, we know, is a Giro sprinter, has real problems with most of the climbs, especially after day yesterday. We saw him at the break yesterday, and then by himself taking the applaudits of the crowd, which was good.
And he was suffering yesterday because he was in the breakaway, and he got a long ways ahead, and then he finished up totally out the rear end of peloton on the day at 46:44, where the gruppetto was at 40 minutes 22, or 40 minutes 42. So the gruppetto caught him and just went through him, and he wasn't able to hold on the final climb, so he must be suffering majorly.
Yeah, he must be indeed. Riders who didn't take part yesterday, his teammates Favili and Balloni, but Ruhanu and Kiki abandoning yesterday. One abandoned today, Timon Subert of the NetApp squad. And we're hearing on Race Radio there will be some sort of communication about the ejections at some point. So my guess is they've been hanging onto a car, but that is just a guess. There in the middle of your shot is Domenico Pozzovivo. Yesterday came over the line thinking perhaps he could have had a bit more in the tank, but he didn't. 4 minutes is the gap at the moment. Terrific performance yesterday by Ryder Hagedal, Sean. I mean, he really did show that if you're going to take the fight to me, you're going to have to be a bit better than you are. The best man on the day at trying to challenge Ryder was Michele Scarponi. Big hats off to him as well.
Yes, well, Scarponi, of the big favourites, he was the one who started to put in the tax and number of kilometres in the finish, and we know Scarponi, if he has anything left, any fire left in his belly, any power left, he will go on the attack, and he did it a number of times yesterday, at least 3 times, and then we could see Ryder Hagedal putting a big dig and showing to him, well, I can do that also. And if you're feeling good, that's the way to ride. Follow the first attacks and then just give one yourself, and exactly the tactic, I think, for Hagedal. Sometimes riders, they follow a couple of attacks and then they start making a pace on the front. They can be on the limit also, and sometimes there's a bit of bluffing in the final kilometres, but with Ryder Hagedal, there was no bluff yesterday. We see the way he just continued on riding, actually rode away from all the favourites, took a little bit of time from everybody, and looking very impressive. And of the big favourites, he's looking the strongest man going into this final mountain stage, and it's all a question now about continuing on that way. But we've seen riders that ride so well the previous day in the mountain stage, and the following day they just get into a little bit of difficulty, a little bit of an off day, and any of the favourites, if they have a little bit of an off one today, well then you can suffer majorly, and time you can take a lot of seconds, even minutes on this final climb of the day.
What do you think of this composition of this break, this Oliver Zorg coming through? Zorg is, well, fantastic for him last year at Leopard Trek. This man in our shop here, he managed to win the only race he's ever won as a professional, and it was the Tour of Lombardy, so not a bad start after, I think, 12 years as a professional, something like that. Samuel up. Sort of pumping action style he's got, just he seems to drive the bike forward rather than just turn the legs in a fluid manner. There always seems to be a little push on the bike every time he moves. It's a good strong breakaway group, Sean, but it's a shame that Roman Kreuziger is in it for the other guys. Although he's only 12 minutes down, he's just too far ahead, too close, should we say, in the general classification, and too dangerous for those riders who want to take the stage today. Not so much the general classification, but those riders who are aiming at the glory of the stage today.
Well, I think that is the really interesting one. We see Cunego there just starting to ride on the front with Garmin Barracuda, and we all know the reason why. For the breakaway, that is going to be the difficult situation they're in now. If you have a team who have a rider back in the bunch who really think this stage they can do it, and this is the monster stage to win here, of course. And we heard Daniel Lloyd saying it, if you can win this one today, the rider who wins here just goes down in history in cycling. And for a Pozzovivo, Lampre, it's a huge opportunity. If he's feeling good, well, he can do so much damage on this climb. So they want to get it back into a controlling situation, and the breakaway, they're not allowed to grow out that advantage where they could, some of those riders, hold on and go to contest for stage victory.
We'll finish on the Stelvio today, 2,757 metres in height. It's the highest alpine pass in the Eastern Alps. 1953 was the first time it was used, when Fausto Coppi romped away and won the stage. 34 at the time, so right in the glory days of his career. Other winners on the climb include Graziano Battistini, 1965, and the great Spanish climber Jose Manuel Fuente back in the mid-1970s. Fuente was just an absolutely pure climber. The days of those sort of riders have gone now, Sean, haven't they, really? You have to be a bit of everything. But Fuente, for example, used to, in the same time as Merckx, he used to just attack in the mountains, attack day after day after day after day. Had that ability to attack really hard in the mountains, but had no other ability at all.
Well, the style of racing as well was quite a bit different than what we're having now. The mountain stages, they get to a mountain and they ride at a good pace, and a lot of the time the bunch would all arrive together at the foot of a big mountain, and then the climbers would kick into action and just sprint off up the climb. It's not the situation at all, and we've seen every day here, yesterday more recent, where a breakaway goes away and it's out front, and again today with a big breakaway, and the bunch has to ride so fast, and the climbers, they get it more difficult now to stay in the bunch. And if you're not a real good, real strong rider, well, you're going to get to the bottom of the mountain, you're totally cooked, you can do nothing. So the climbers have much more all-rounders now. They're much better riders on the flatter stages. They can do a lot of everything, and it's a total different situation. Where, as you said, back in 25, 30 years ago, they were just total climbers on the flat stages. They would have difficulty staying in the peloton when they start racing fast.
Yeah, and especially the Spaniards, they had a reputation, didn't they, for that sort of rider ever since Barramontes, really, who could just sort of light up a Grand Tour in the mountains and just accelerate away from everybody and dance over the top of things. But actually, when it came down to getting in the time trial, it wasn't quite the same. Or on the flat, they were put under real pressure. I suppose the real turning point started to come with Luis Ocaña, who was an excellent time trialist as well. But there we are. Steph Clement's been doing an awful lot of work on the front. There's Damiano Cunego. He's been particularly impressive in the lime green of Liquigas there. They are going through Madonna di Tirano. with 76 kilometres to go. And let's just have a bit more of an in-depth look at what the course is today. 76 to go, and as they pass through Tirano, it's not so far now before we get to the top of the Mortirolo. The Mortirolo summit comes at 56.5 kilometres to go to the finish. And the climb itself is 11.5 kilometres in length, and it's absolutely vicious, Sean, isn't it, the Mortirolo? I know Lance Armstrong has said, and it's actually Gilberto Simoni has said the same, although Simoni's one up there and likes the climb because of that, the hardest climb that they know.
Well, if you're a Simoni, it's normal he likes the climb because that's where he was really strong.
Yes.
And you know, if it's your speciality, you love real difficult climbs, steep ones especially. Well, then you get a good run of form, you get to a Tour of Italy, you can do some great performances, and then you start loving those climbs. So there's a bit of both. There's some riders, they love the stage today, and there are other riders going to just hate this stage. But it is a difficult climb, and 11.4 kilometres, the gradient very, very steep, and at this stage of the race, 3 weeks of racing done, it's going to hurt everybody. And again, if they start racing aggressively out of the bunch on it, but on this one the gradient is so steep, it's going to hurt everybody anyway, because if you're going at a steadier pace, you have to really make an effort to get up because of the gradient, and it's going to be an energy sapping one. If there's attacks, well, then we will see just riders scattered everywhere on the mountain. They'll be just in small little groups, and it will cause major problems. But I think there will be a lot of waiting for the final climb of the day, because 22 kilometres of Stelvio, it's a long one, and that's where riders who feel they can win the stage, who can maybe do something in the general classification, can upset the classement and try and do something if they're really feeling good today. The Stelvio, I think there's sufficient distance there in 22 kilometres.
Yes, the gradient on the Mortirolo is an average, 15%, just under average. 22% is the maximum up near the top. And I think the cruelest thing about the Mortirolo, Sean, apart from its length and steepness in its central section, is they've got that little downhill bit between about 8.5 and 9.5 kilometres, and then it just ramps up into this incredible 22% ramp. It's just a horrible, horrible thing. It's always 22%, 1 in 5, between 1 in 5, 1 in 4. It's just a horrible way to look at it. You get a tiny little respite, and then you've got it again just when you think you've got something under your belt.
Yes, it's a real killer. That final kilometres is really difficult, and I suppose that downhill, if you're just in the peloton, what will be left of the peloton, I reckon it will be quite small again. We get to that point, but of the big favourites, and you're a rider maybe, who's just hanging in there, 25, 30 riders on that downhill, and they want to push it on, because a team like Liquigas want to keep the pace high to get onto the descent and get Basso down off of this Mortirolo, and you can just suffer so much on that downhill bit as well, and then you start to kick up on that final real leg breaker. It's going to be a killer. So depending on how you feel and what group you're in, I think in the gruppetto, in the bus, they will really just take it easy on that little downhill bit, recover a bit, have something to eat, have something to drink, and then just crawl their way up that final really big percentage part of it to the summit.
I'm wondering what the tactic of Cunego will be, Sean, because they've been riding on the frontier along with Euskaltel. They're not that far from the Mortirolo, and the Mortirolo is more suited to Domenico Pozzovivo than any other mountain probably here, just because of its incredible steepness. And we saw what he did on the Giro del Trentino. He just romped away from people like Sylvester Schmidt and Roman Kreuziger. It's not suited to a rider like Kreuziger or Basso. All these riders who just have to maintain an even pace, Sean. So is it even conceivable that Pozzovivo may launch an attack on the rest of them as far out as the Mortirolo?
Well, it's a long ways out, and it's 162 kilometres at the summit. So at 19 kilometre stage, well, you have plus 50 kilometres to go to the finish. It's a long ways, and of that, the 22 kilometres to the Stelvio. But in the valley, I think that's where it's going to be difficult. And for a Pozzovivo, if he's on his own, or even with 2 or 3 riders, it's going to be a killer there, because there's a good 20, 15 kilometres in the valley where it flattens out for a bit, and then it just goes gradually uphill all the time until you get onto the real section of the Stelvio on that final 22k. So I doubt it very much that he will go in the attack on Mortirolo. But again, you just never know. It's hard to see it happening, but I think what they're doing with Cunego, the team, that just want to keep control of this breakaway out front and not allow them to take that 6 or 7 minutes, because when you look at the riders that are up there, Cunego, of course, who can ride quite strong right to the end. We know his capabilities. Then there's Slachter, who is riding quite strong as well, and quite a number of other good riders. Seppa, for example, if he's on a good day. So you can't allow this breakaway to get 6 or 7 minutes, and then it's going to be a real hard chase to close them down, where they're just keeping control of the situation on the front of the bunch with Garmin Barracuda at the moment, and I think it will be all down to the final climb.
Thinking of the stage victory rather than the overall, then at least you can perhaps do something for both in the final climb. That's the Sanctuary here in Tirano. Built because, if I remember rightly, there was meant to be I think the Madonna was meant to have appeared here to somebody, I can't remember who, but back in the 16th century anyway, and that's where we get the enormous towers, which I know Jan really like. 73 kilometres still to go, and the Mortirolo is not very far away, and so we don't get stopped by the train process. Cause a few problems. There is Jose Seppa sitting in the front here, number 22, with Branislav Samalar behind him. You've got to say, Sean, these are the top boys in the world on a bike, and they all look absolutely shattered. Even just rolling along, it looks a bit like at the end of a Sunday club run. They're all a bit knackered here.
Yes, well, they're working strongly at it at the moment, and some of them are looking.
It's just the body language.
More knackered than other ones, and that's the that's the normal at the end of a 3-week tour. Some guys, the recovery is that little bit better, and that's an advantage. Then you recover that bit more for the following day, and after a stage like yesterday, everybody suffered. The guys who were battling for stage victory, the general classification, but also the ones who were back in the group, in the bus as we call it, and it was just a struggle to get in yesterday, so some not recovered as well as others.
Breakaway group beginning to climb the Mortirolo. This is the Mark Cavendish group with, looks like, Feline and Ferrari in that. The young man from NetApp is Daniel Shawn. And I've got to say, they've done pretty well, actually. Is this another group? No, this is the main group. Main peloton. And the sprinters have done fairly well, Sean, to hang in so far. The Passo di Tonali is a hard old climb in itself, and then they managed to get over that. And Aprica, Telio and Giro so far. Tirano, the sprint point is already gone for the points, but some of the sprinters hanging in particularly well. Well,
it's amazing how well they can hang in when they have to, and when you make the calculation of the stage, 219 kilometres, and the first the Passo del Tonale at 32 kilometres. they know that they have to dig in and try and stay in the group or stay very close and possibly come back on the descent, just lose contact in the last number of kilometres. Because if you go out at that point after just over 30 kilometres, it's a long road to the finish, and with the mountains we have to climb, so they just, cling on in there, and they can do it much better. And when they come to a point then when they know they can just start forming the group, and we see them at this point, it's starting to happen now.
Jack Bauer nearest to us, the big New Zealander, ex-rider for Endura for 2 seasons in the UK, so we can claim him as being a rider. As behind him, Ryder Hejdahl, the man everybody is looking at, and that is the other, of course, it's strung out in the valley here as they get towards the Mortirolo. The other thing that we're looking at is whether Hejdahl can manage this massively steep gradient in the Mortirolo. I suppose that leads on from the question I was asking earlier, Sean, as to whether people will actually attack on the Mortirolo and put Ryder Hejdahl under the real pressure, because if it's super steep, is it likely that this man will crack? We just don't know, actually, is the answer.
Well, I think when you look at the other favourites, and if you look at Basso, for example, if you look at Scarponi, I think Hejdahl, he's going to be certainly as good as him on the steep sections. The better climbers, the Pozzo Vivo, that's another situation. Rodriguez as well, I think he will be in the same category as the Scarponis, Basso and Hejdahl. But it's all about, how they recovered after yesterday's big battle, because everybody just battled to the line there. We could see them, the favourites, like they were in 1 and 2s, and they were just 30 metres apart in that final 2.5 kilometres, and they were just fighting to get to the line, and everybody was at the end of their powers yesterday. And then recovery is such an important thing for a stage like today of 219 kilometres. So if they really start racing hard up the Mortirolo, well, then we could see some cracks. But I'm afraid that Hejdahl looks to have the match for them all. It's all about the final climb, the altitude as well. I think that could have a little bit of a special effect on somebody today, and that's where I would be concerned about the Mortirolo, with that huge altitude of 2,700.
Sandy Cassar at the back of the little shot here as they run down this last tiny bit of the valley, and up ahead you can see the Mortirolo. 11.4 kilometres in length, the maximum gradient to the top of 22%. Somewhere between 1 in 5 and 1 in 4 for those people in old money. And it's almost as steep as that in the middle section as well, between 3.5 kilometres and 7 kilometres. Two minutes and 42 seconds is the gap, and there's a few nerves, one has to say, within the peloton. And now Basso's Liquigas team coming to the front and trying to exert some sort of authority before they get to the foot of the Mortirolo. I've got a feeling that a couple of the riders will look at each other and see what they can get out of this climb. Clearly the Stelvio is going to be the big focus of the day, but you just don't know. They're almost upon the Mortirolo itself, Sean, the breakaway riders. And Tom Schlachter now coming towards the front for Rabobank. And Roman Kreuziger here doesn't necessarily suit him, the Mortirolo, and he's got 2 minutes and 40 seconds of a gap over the peloton. But surprised to see him in the breakaway again today. He's still smarting from that drubbing he got the other day on the Passo Gial.
Well, I think he had just an off day, because we see the way he was yesterday, recovered and riding quite strong. Again today, very much up here, and he wants to get another stage victory, to get as much as possible out of this race now, because general classification, he's lost everything. He's not up there, and he was very much one of the big favourites starting out his Giro. And get into the break, that's the way he can win the stage, because when he waits back in the bunch, he always has difficulty against the better climbers, and we know this final climb of the day, he's not going to like this either, and he's done a really good job to get into the breakaway. Unfortunately, there's teams like Cunego who really want to keep the lead on it and not allow the breakaway to get too far out. As we can see, 2:39 at the moment. It's going to be a hard one for anybody in the breakaway to be strong enough and capable of staying out in front and going for a stage victory here, because the moment it starts out with the big bunch of riders here, the favourites, when they start racing, this gap will just come down real quick.
Sylvester Schmidt is back in the lineup for Liquigas here, number 128, third back behind Alessandro Spezialezzi of Lampre. Looks nervous to me, Sean, this in the bunch. They're all sort of looking at each other. They're already breathing quite hard because this break has not been allowed to get away, and there just seems a little bit of nerves knocking about. I'm not surprised.
Well, they're probably taking deep breaths to get as much oxygen into your lungs as possible, because as you get further up, they're not going to be a lot. And this climb, it's a monument of climbs, and anybody in bike racing from a young age that you've been following the big tours, the Tour of Italy, this would be one that they'd all know. And for that reason, I think there's a little bit of nervousness to get onto the climb here, and everybody today, even the big favourites, who some of them can be very cool in the earlier parts of the stage, I think the nervous, the heart rate's a little bit higher now than it normally would, because this is the monument, the Motorola, and as we come on to the peloton.
Left-hand side of your screen is the breakaway led by Tom Schlachter. Just behind him is Romain Kreuziger, then Caruso in the red of Katusha. Next to Losada in the lime green of Liquigas is Caruso on the right-hand side. On the right, and the right box on your screen, it's Alessandro Spezialezzi, who's leading the main peloton onto the climb now. It's very tight, it's very twisting. So how does it compare with other climbs? I know lots of people asking the question already. There's really three climbs, really, I guess. I mean, we could argue the toss that the cows come home, but essentially there are three climbs of this magnitude in European tours. One is the Angliru in Spain, used in the Vuelta a España, and the other two are the Zoncolan, which was used last year, and this, the Mortirolo here in the Giro d'Italia. And really in France, Sean, they don't tend to use climbs of this sort of severity very much in the Tour de France.
No, percentage-wise, we don't have the real steep gradient in the Tour of France, and as you said, the Angliru in Spain, that is a one which is really steep. But again, the distance of it wouldn't be as long, maybe as long as sections as we have today, and this is a climb like this of just over 11 kilometers. It's going to be a lot of the sections are really steep in the very, very high numbers of gradients, and that's where it's going to really test everybody, because some of the shorter ones you can make an effort to get through them and recover on the easier sections. That's not going to be easy here, because most of the time you have such a steep section, you're going to be pretty much to 100% getting up there, and that means if you're just riding a good tempo in the bunch, if somebody goes in the attack on it, well, then you're going to be totally on the rivet and on 100%, and that is going to really hurt on this one.
And some people already really hurting here on the climb of the Mortirolo, and this is not the usual side it's taken from, this climb, but even so it is viciously steep. Swiss climber is climbing Domestique, a good all-round rider and winner of the Tour of Lombardy. Oliver Zorg leads the peloton out. Look, some riders are going backwards. Already suffering, and on the fierce gradient here is Valerio Agnoli. Sean, he looked like he was going backwards rather than forwards, but you never know why he was going backwards. This is Giuseppe Martinelli of Astana. Yesterday was a victory. We didn't really expect it because after Cervinia, where Roman finished 5th, he had to recover and restart properly. It's been great. He suffered a bit, but I've only felt like a few times in my life. We insisted on yesterday a lot of the work being done for Roman. In the last 20 kilometers we made perfect teamwork. I'd like to thank everybody, he says. Well, they could switch their tactics, couldn't they, Sean, fairly rapidly, because on the first big climb of the day, the Magnan Paolo Tirolongo was dropped, and dropped quite heavily. So immediately you can say, okay, right, today, now, we can put all our efforts to Roman if he needs it.
Yes, and within the team as well, you know the reason guys are dropped. If they're starting to get tired in the last number of days, you can feel that as a rider, and it just starts to hurt that bit more every day. And if that's the case, well then, in Tirolongo's case, which looks very much that way, there's nothing you can do for him. He's just going to try and get through this race and finish. Where with a Cunego, he had one disastrous day where he was totally off and got left behind a long ways from the finish, but recovered very well, and the riders can feel that as well. You're on a bad day, but the following day that you're recovered very well, and you're ready for action again, you're ready for the battle. And with Cunego and Astana, that is the situation, and they have went about it today. He's out there on the break, and they would have been hoping, and he would have been hoping as well, this break would have got 7 or 8 minutes, and then they would have a good opportunity of going on towards the finish. But as we can see, there's teams with other tactics here, and it's really taking the breakaway back big time, and now the advantage is nothing, which they would like to have on this the climb of the Mortirolo.
Well, we're looking at the front of the peloton through the trees, but the breakaway is all split to pieces already. Zorg, you've got to ride at your own pace. Riding with other men is very, very difficult on a climb this steep. Sean, it's almost not impossible, but it's extremely difficult, especially when you're tired, to match your pace to another rider's if they're slower even. That's very difficult indeed.
Well, first of all, if you have a number of riders who are that bit stronger, they feel that bit better, well, they're going to push on. If they're good climbers, well, they're going to give you problems if you're tired. And what you have to do is just try and get into your own pace, keep working at it, keep giving it close to 100%. And the riders will be very, very familiar with that. They do it so much during the seasons and through their career for many years. And you just get up. But if you try and follow a rider like Zorg or Carrara, for example, you're going to do that for a kilometre, but then you'll totally explode on a steep one like this, and you'll almost come to a standstill, and you're going to have major difficulty getting to the top. So you have to calculate your effort and just work at your 95% and keep working at that. But your 95%, you can be a long ways off of 2 leaders, because they can be so much stronger, and they just ride away from you so quickly in this one.
Yep, and they have. Look at this. Oliver Zorg and Matteo Carrara are, well, an awful long way ahead, Sean, of the rest of the guys they were with already. Zorg and Carrara clearly in better shape for a climb like this, or better at a climb like this, than all the others they were with, and the others are really suffering, and they have to ride at their own pace, whereas these two could ride ahead that little bit more. Here we are back with the peloton. Alessandro Speziolezzi still pacing them up. Rider Ojedal doesn't look particularly comfortable, actually. That's interesting. Maybe it was just that shot we had of him there. We haven't seen too many shots of him so far. Now he looks a little bit more comfy. Right behind him is Paolo Tirolongo. We got some recovery from yesterday. These are riders towards the back, beginning to get dropped. Oh, we all know this feeling, don't we? Michael Golas, former wearer of the Mountains classification jersey, and this is a dreadful feeling. I think every cyclist in the history of cycling has felt like that on the hill. Crikey, Zorg and Carrara are going well at it, Sean.
They sure are. They're riding very strong here, and it will be just interesting to see the rest of the breakaway group there, where they are. We can see nobody at the moment, but again, 15, maybe 20 seconds of an advantage, and it depends on Cunego, for example. If he's making the calculation, well, if I go too hard on this one, I can pay later. But when you study the situation, 3 minutes 64 kilometres, I think if Roman Cunego was feeling okay, he would just follow the pace there and stay with our two leaders. So it's not looking that he's in the best of shape yesterday, and after his efforts he's probably paying a little bit, but nothing to lose. Get into the breakaway and see what happens. If this breakaway are taking 8 or 9 minutes, well then it would be a great opportunity for the likes of Cunego, but he has two men here who've left him on this climb who seems to be feeling much stronger today.
Yeah, it's not the sort of climb to be honest, that I think suits Roman Cunego. Peter Stedner sitting in the front of Ryder Hajdahl here, just behind. Familiar style, head up, head straight forward style of Ivan Basso. Never really changes much, even if he's under severe pressure. Oh, this is savage. Look, it's just going to disappear up to the left again now. Around this hairpin they go. It does ramp a little bit, this climb, but not an awful lot. There's 64.3 kilometres to go. They have to work their way steadily over the top of this one, Sean, and it doesn't finish until 56.5 kilometres, so they've got another 8k of this or more. Narrow, winding roads. I mean, as a rider, Sean, when you're in, we're going to take a short commercial break, but I'll ask a question to Sean about the short stretches of road when we get back. Zorg and Carrara. A Swiss rider and an Italian have a gap of about 28 seconds over Roman Cunego. This looks like a Damiano Cunego, who has pulled away from Christian van der Velde, and he is just a little further down the road than Zorg and Carrara. Very, very impressive ride by Caruso all the way through this Giro d'Italia. There we are, there's Caruso, and there is van der Velde. Just behind it looks like Serpa, and behind that Cunego and a number of the other riders as well. 11.4 kilometres in total, this brutal, unrelenting, winding climb. And Sean, just before the break, I was going to ask you, as a rider, is it better, certainly well for you, was it better to have these winding climbs with lots of short stretches of road before hairpins, so you've got a lot of hairpins in it, or did you prefer the big, long ramps of something like a Mont Ventoux?
Well, I think most riders would like the corners all the time, a lot of hairpins, and we see and we have seen here on some of the hairpins here, it does ease off a little bit, and you get a little bit of rest in the hairpin, where if it goes straight up and you can see 4, 5, 600 metres in front, you have a straight road, that is real, killing, and it's mind-wrecking, and it's all about how you're feeling as well. When you're suffering, it certainly, starts to work on you mentally. And the straight sections, I did not like them at all. The hairpins are the ones where you get a little bit of recovery. And when you get to the hairpin as well, you have the normal reaction is you get out of the saddle a bit to get around it. And that, I think it relieves a bit as well. You stretch the legs a bit, and when you're on a straight line, I find it difficult to get out of the saddle a bit more. So certainly the ones with a lot of hairpins were the ones where I preferred the climbs.
I'd be interested to know what people think. It's at Spokesman, SPOKESMEN. As we see Graham Watson going past on the motorbike, he's got the easy ride today, the photographer. This is Zorg. And Carrara has been distanced a little bit. Caruso's come past him, so Carrara really suffering now. He was with Zorg for a while, but he's dropped back a little bit. Just to know what you think. Certainly is a leisure rider, Sean. I would tend to agree with you. Things like, although it depends on, as I say, how the legs are. Mont Ventoux for me was just soul destroying. These long, straight sections with the hairpins in. Whereas a climb like this, you can almost sort of tick the bends off, can't you? There's a sort of a variety of mental stimulation going past you all the time. Specialezzi knows this sort of work very well. They're one of the most experienced domestiques in the peloton. This is impressive riding by Caruso here, Sean, once again.
Yes, and you can see here he's just trying to make contact with the Director Sportif, and you know, it's going to be interesting here. What is the tactic for Caruso here? I certainly do not see him pushing on here. I think he will sit just behind Zorg and leave him make the pace, and we can see you know, a Serpa also appearing there in our screen, so he's coming up slowly, and I'd not be surprised if we see Kreuziger appearing a bit further on. The riders, maybe they just decided to get into that rhythm on this one, because it is a climb of 11.4 kilometers, and if you attack it in the beginning a bit too much too early, well, if you start paying further up, so get into your rhythm and see how you're feeling. As we can see a mechanical here.
Yep, that looks like
Rubiano.
Yep, winner of a stage ship in the Giro, Rubiano. A little bit of mechanic. This is Rabottini, dropped from the breakaway, but just working his own way up. He's done a very good job today, Sean. First of all, making sure he got in the right break, which went almost immediately, making sure he got there, and secondly, claiming all the points on the mountain so far. And a little tap on the back there from Specialezzi, saying well done.
Yes, and he's done the job really well today, getting into the breakaway with the mountains classification jersey on his shoulders, and he's increased his lead there big time. And I think now he's you know, satisfied. He knows that you know, the next one he's not going to be able to stay up there. He's felt that on this Motorola, and just make your pace, and he's just working away at it. And he's also in a good position here. We're a long ways into the stage up this climb. He is, you know, going to have no problem with the time limits, and he, you know, I think he's quite a happy man at the moment.
I think he is. Stevie Whitey writing in on Twitter. You seem to be the only person so far, sir, who prefers the long straight ones. Get into the saddle and keep spinning. Everybody else saying no, little milestones or hairpins all the time. Jouplan is my favourite, says limping cyclist. Not mine, although going down's quite nice down the Jouplan. Somebody writing in saying hills, I like the ones that go down. Indeed. 3 minutes and 43 seconds, so the gap has grown out a little bit, Sean, and as you suspected, nobody's going to do a thing on this one. It's just so steep and so unrelenting, they're just going to leave it for the Stelvio to battle each other. But these men here, well, certainly Oliver Zorg, the other two, Caruso and Van der Velde, aren't concerned with stage victory here, but Serpa and Zorg are in it for the glory of the day.
Yes, well, Zorg is certainly on a mission here. He wants to push on. Some of the other ones, I'm not sure what the tactic will be, but they're looking comfortable there, and just stay in the front and control the situation. And I suppose they're waiting to see what will happen on the rest of this climb, the Motorola. Will there be some attacks out of the big favourites? And that would change things immediately for the riders who have men up in the general classification. So it's just, for some teams it's a waiting game, other ones want to push on.
Aveva anche delle buone sensazioni.
Valerio Piva
mi ha sempre detto che stava bene,
saying,
anche
well, the
nel
Motorola is a climb where you can gain or you can lose a lot.
ha attaccato, lui ha risposto due
really
volte,
tough.
la terza quando è partito Eseda,
So
lì
the
forse
rider
ha fatto un
shouldn't wait
attimino, ha
for the
tentennato un
Stelvio, if you
attimo,
ask
ha
me,
fatto
because it's
reagire
steady
basso
climb.
e intanto si è creato il buco e poi è stato lì Eseda l'ha visto
And
e ha tirato, ha fatto una cronometro fino in
Liquigas
cima,
did a
quindi
perfect job for its captain.
Joachim naturalmente ha sofferto,
Would be the
come penso
favourite
hanno
on
sofferto
the
tutti,
Stelvio, of course.
ha limitato i danni alla fine, non cambia
but,
tanto,
just as
abbiamo
we say,
comunque la maglia,
with,
c'è una tappa
Valerio
ancora
Piva,
molto dura, noi non
saying they should
siamo
attack on the
demoralizzati,
Mortirolo. Look at this, his
lui
man
sta andando
Joachim Rodriguez
fortissimo,
has
però
done exactly that,
sicuramente
and
se
he's got
questo
rider
Giro
Hejdal
lui
in
lo
his
dominerà
wheel.
anche in salita, sarà il migliore,
Concentrating
avrà
on the
meritato,
interview for a
però
minute, but actually it doesn't really matter what he's saying at the
noi
moment, because
vogliamo
it's
provare ancora
Joachim
qualcosa,
Rodriguez
quindi
who's
Joachim
making the pace
non è
at the front
abbattuto,
here,
ha il morale, ha la maglia,
and
e
behind him
vuole
rider
tenersela, e poi
Hejdal
vedremo
and
cronometro, come
Michele
sarà la
Scarponi
fine oggi,
has come
e
across.
noi partiamo
I'll
comunque
have to try and pick up where he is.
motivati per far bene. Ma sai, il Mortirolo secondo me è una salita che può fargli
The
male,
Mortirolo is
perché è molto ripida, molto dura, quindi
it's
secondo me
a
bisogna
classic climb. It's
sicuramente non
big in the Giro
aspettare lo
history.
Stelvio, perché lo Stelvio è
The
una salita più
Stelvio is
regolare,
even more
forse una
so. To
salita
finish
che
there
ha
would be
dato le
like
sue caratteristiche. E negli
a
ultimi
dream, I think.
giorni la tattica anche Liquigas, che ha sicuramente fatto il meglio per il suo capitano, l'ha favorito, perché quell'andatura veloce e regolare sicuramente ha favorito anche lui. Quindi secondo me quello che potrebbe soffrire, almeno
the pictures on the right hand side, rather than listen to the interview for just a second, because it's Rodriguez who's making the real move here, and all the main favourites are going across to him. So this is pushing the pace on a little bit. Right, let's try and get back.
Ancora difficili, bisogna avere una squadra anche che sia lì vicino per portarlo poi ai piedi dello Stelvio, quindi secondo me comunque per poter fargli male e
hopefully they'll carry on their attack through to the Stelvio and put Hejdal in trouble. That's what he was saying. .339 is the gap, and Hejdal has responded, Sean, by sort of digging in deep here. Once Rodriguez has got up here, Sergio Enyo is here, Basso, Uran. Enyo looks over his shoulder for Uran and Scarponi. But it was Rodriguez who set the pace, and Ryder Hejdal said, okay, that's it. You know, if you're going to do that, I'm going to be up here. He does not want to show any sign of weakness at all. There's definitely dealing a hand of strength here.
Yes, well, Rodriguez putting in a good dig there, and Hejdal reaction immediately. Then Rodriguez doing it again, and we see all the big favourites coming back here. He doesn't need a situation where he gets away with 5 or 6 at the top men in the general classification. That's not a good situation for Hejdal, because if they go on here and make the descent and then get into the valley, which there is that 20 kilometres, which is going to be difficult, and gradually going uphill in the valley and getting the gradient getting more and more as you go on to the final climb of the day. So he needs as many men as possible, and he needs to try and keep control of the situation, and maybe get a man or two from the team over the top of this one, and they could be very important, but not in a situation where he has only the big favourites with him, 5 or 6 men. Then they would start attacking, and Hejdal would have to do a lot of work to control all of those.
Well, that's what they're all counting on, Sean. That's exactly what they're counting on. Rodriguez starts the attack. Hejdal has got to respond because they're so close in the GC. All the other big favourites come across. Although Ryder Hejdal's got a man up the road here in Christian van der Velde, so is Ivan Basso. Basso has got Caruso here. Basso is in this group. Few more riders coming back, but 3 riders from Euskaltel there. Chiruka taking a drink from the bottle. Nievi will be in here. Serge Pauls. Here's the rider setting pace on the front at the moment. We must presume then the Cataldo is also in this group. There he is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 back, just ahead of Thomas De Gendt, with those typical white shades on of his Dario Cataldo. Seconds from our 2 leading men of the 4 leading men, should I say, Caruso, Zorg, Serpa and van der Velde, to this group of big favourites. Ignited a little bit of pressure put on by Joaquim Rodriguez. And rider Herdal having to respond to that, and a bit isolated in here now. Dario Cataldo has Serge Pauls. Ivan Basso has a man up the road. This is Andre Amador coming across to these men here. It's interesting. Amador has been very, very strong. Macho Bono about to be picked up by the Scarponi group. His team leader is in this group. I don't think he'll have too much to still give. But Herdal there responded, Sean, and he sort of left himself a little bit isolated here.
Yes, well, there was nothing he could do, only respond immediately to Rodriguez and just try and calm things down, and it has done that, although 56 kilometres at the summit of this one, so there's quite a bit to go, and there's still time for the attacks.
4k or 3.5k to the top here. Oliver Zorg shades off now, leads the pace here. Amador trying to get as much fluid down himself as possible. The ever-impressive Damiano Caruso sits in here behind the winner of the Tour of Lombardy, Zorg. Van der Velde looks like he's trying to get back to a car for a bottle at some point. In desperate need. And it looks like the neutral car is going to hand out a bottle here, which they can. Vitoria providing the neutral service car here, and Van der Velde clearly grabbed a bottle, take something from it, take as much water as he can, do what he wants with it, and dispose of it. It's just stuff you really don't want to carry around. Well, Herdal responded to the pressure put on by Joaquim Rodriguez. We did catch up with him before today's stage.
I'm fully aware of the situation, and I'm just focusing on today and then on to tomorrow.
The more the race develops and the cooler you are, you look growing in confidence and very, very cool.
That's easy to do when your legs are good, so that's my style anyways. So that's it.
And do you think you impress your rivals? You've got a psychological advantage now.
I think they understand that I'm strong, that's for sure.
So you will use that, of course.
I think I've been using it the whole race.
Yeah.
Thank you. He's difficult to drag an interview out, isn't he? Ryder Herdal, obviously he's keeping himself under control, keeping the lid on anything he actually says, but he's Christian having difficulty trying to drag something out of him here. Use that sort of laconic style. Zorg is pushing on. And for him, it's all about the stage today, Oliver Zorg. Just the one professional victory to his name, and that was in the Tour of Lombardy last year. It's going very well, actually, Sean, today. It's not the easiest of climbs, one would say, and he's going very well indeed, as is Serge Pauls here, leading this group. But we often see Herdal with his head down a little bit, but today he looks to be a little under pressure, as does De Gendt. Both of them start looking at their front wheel a bit, like so many cyclists do when they're really feeling under strain. But so far, no cracks appearing in the Canadian's armour.
No cracks appearing at this moment, but it's very early days, and it's interesting to see. He looks like he's suffering a bit, but again, he has that style. He bobs the shoulders a bit on the climb, and it's hard to know if he's suffering any more than the others. And surprising that Rodriguez, he put in an attack. He could be feeling okay today, and will he try and do something on the final climb? It doesn't look like on the Mortirolo that they're going to really put anybody in difficulty. With the pace being set by Omega Quickstep on the front by Serge Powers, and this pace is going to continue, and we're getting closer to the top, and I think it's all going to be down to the final climb of the day.
I think so too. We've still got riders who were suffering yesterday, like Tira Longo and Thomas De Gendt riding right at the front. Well, De Gendt wasn't suffering so much, but he was distanced yesterday. So that sort of would indicate, Sean, that they're not really giving it absolutely full gas at the moment. I can't say I blame them either. Well, sometimes in the past, big name riders, big name favourites would use a climb like the Mortirolo, the penultimate climb of the day, especially if it was very difficult, to soften up their rivals, Sean, to soften their legs up, give it a big dig and try and soften them up ready for a final attack. Not happening today. We saw Joaquin Rodriguez, a little flash of it, but I think that was just to sort of test a few people rather than making the pace so hard that it really made them suffer, so they had nothing left for recovery.
Yes, well, we did see Rodriguez, and maybe he felt that Heidel was suffering a bit, and decided just to put in a little bit of attack to see what the reaction would be, and we did see then he put in a second one, not as strong as the first one, but again he did do it, and it's all about just getting a feeling what way the other favourites are feeling, and he probably could have done more. It looked like that he wasn't really going for it, and Rodriguez, he could be saying, well, some of these guys are not as good maybe as yesterday, but things change as well. You can feel okay on this climb, but still, you have this 59 kilometres from the summit to the finish today, so you have you have 30 kilometres plus to get to the bottom of the really difficult climb of the day, and a lot of things can change, but we can see there they're just marking each other, and the problem is it's a long ways in the valley. I think if it was just downhill and straight up immediately to the finish, then we might see more action here, but the problem is with this 20 kilometres in or about to get up the valley to the final climb of the day, I think everybody's a little bit scared of that.
That's Oliver Zorg is on that cruel little downhill section before it kicks up again to 22% to get to the top of the Mortirolo. Serge Pauls from Belgium leads the group of favourites at the moment. And back onto the climbing goes Oliver Zorg. And just look at the state of the road as well here, Sean. Onto the old concrete road on the Mortirolo here. Nice. Bit of a Sunday jaunt, or Saturday jaunt in this case. It's one professional victory. There we are, 5 times as good at the Giro d'Italia, but well, that should suit Ryder Edgedal then, being a former mountain biker. I'm sure the favourites will be on this section as they go over the top of this tiny little bit here. They are now on the section that runs downhill for about a kilometre or so. It's a terrific piece of riding by Zorg. Still got 2 minutes and 57 seconds, so he's going very well, Sean. I mean, I know the others aren't really attacking each other, but then Zorg is just riding strongly. He's not going anything like an attacking pace. He's just keeping himself rolling as strongly as he can. He still knows he's got the stealthier to go.
Yes, well, he is strongest. He's riding quite well here, but again, what's he going to do when he gets to the summit here? Does he continue on and go for this final 59 kilometres on his own, or does he wait back for the other riders, which we see here in our picture? And the problem is, some of the riders here, liquid gas, as we can see, Tira Longo slides off here.
Tirolongo having a problem and going off with Matteo Bono. So the two of them have collided, and that's not nice. Two of them on the edge a little bit. Tirolongo making contact again. Whacked his chin there. And maybe Matteo Bono, did Tirolongo slide out? Yes. Oh. Looks as though he'd caught a bit of the dust that was on the road there, Sean.
Yes, he just slided off on the front, and nothing he could do. No chance when it goes, when the front starts to slide on you, down you go. And came very heavy on his face there, slided along. We could see him rubbing the right hand side of his face when he was getting back on the bike, and he was swinging there on the rear of that group. We could see he was one of the last men. So I think on the limit a bit, as they say in bike terms, on the rivet. And when you're in that state, well then you can make a little bit of an error.
For those of you who don't know where the term "on the rivet" comes from, if you're new to cycling, I know all your old hands know exactly where it comes from, but there's a lot of people who aren't cyclists of ancient calibre. It comes from the days when leather saddles were regularly used. You had big brass rivets holding them in around the back
and the front.
And the front. So that's where the rivet comes from.
Yes.
On the rivet, and you were perched on the front of the saddle.
Perched on the front of the saddle, exactly.
Nice to see some Basque flags out the side of the road. Yes, the rivet used to be right on the front of the saddle as well as on the round the back. You still see them around the back. But, the term "on the rivet" is from being on the front. This is horrible, Sean.
There'll be a lot of guys on the rivet here.
Yeah,
we can see the surface. It's just horrible. It's so bumpy there, and when you have this gradient, it just makes it so difficult to keep the bike moving on. And we can see his Og there. He's on a real steep section and struggling to keep the pedals turning.
Nasty stuff. As I say, should suit Hajidal. De Gendt moves to the front. Whoops. Be careful if you're pushing. You're supposed to be pushing these days, but when they're going so slowly, Sean, it can be as dangerous as anything else being pushed. They think they're doing a service, but actually they can just unbalance you.
Yes, if somebody pushes you and is not experienced, that they hold your saddle good and firm and they push you at the same time. But if they push you to the side, they can knock you off very easily. And also you have to be careful, because with the commissars, if you allow to be pushed too long, well then you can get this fine. We can see the way he looks there as though he allowed to push for a moment, and then he looks round and say, just leave me go now, because otherwise I'm going to get a penalty.
He certainly is. Very, very nasty section of road, and the road. So, oops, problems for Pozzovivo. This is this not Domenico Pozzovivo? It looked an awful lot like him. Just a very briefest look there, and we'll just have to wait to get confirmation of that. But the fact the cameras are there, just looked a lot like him there. So look at this, John. Everybody, some of these riders just simply dragging their weary, sorry carcasses up here now. After 3 weeks of racing, this is the incredibly steep section. Or is that Pozzovivo there? In which case it would be Brambilla, I think, who's possibly in trouble. Let's have a look at that. That is Pozzovivo there. The place that this mountain has in the affections of the Italians in particular, Sean. They remember Marco Pantani as a climber at the top of this. There's a sort of special prize that they have over the top of this with 500 metres to go, and it'll be Zorg who gets it.
Yes, this one is in remembrance of the great climber Pantani, and The top of this one is the Pantani, Montagna Pantani it's called, and Zog is definitely going to get up here and take that prize. But we could see there, Lamprey car, there was somebody actually pushing it. It looks like the cars are having difficulty as well.
Yeah.
And the riders who have lost a bit of contact and you find yourself in the car as well, that is just a horrible place to be, because there's so much clutch burning, there's a fume from the cars, the air, it's just horrible there, and the breathing, you're just totally in oxygen depth, and then when you get into that situation between the cars, it's the worst place on earth to be at this moment.
And you've got all these screaming fans either side of you. You're trying to make your own progress up this mountain. Cars are next to you. You've got a tiny gap to be in, as you saw with some of the other riders there, like Brambilla getting off and dozens of riders being tailed off. The cars are trying to get past you, you're trying to keep your own momentum going, and then suddenly the cars will stop for one reason or another. They've been held up by other riders or the crowds, and you have to still battle your way past, and that's what happened to some of those riders just back there, Sean. Some of them are off the bikes, they just can't do anything else, and they're running. It's like a massive Koppenberg all of a sudden.
Yes, and if you're off the rear of the group of big favourites and you're just in the cars, you're really battling to stay in contact there, keep them at the distance, and then try and get back on the descent. But if the cars start coming by and then they slow down and stop actually, and you have to slow down, just slow down only, it's a horrible thing to have to do. But if you get off your bike and then get back again on the steep section just to get moving again, that's where you need some of the spectators to give you a push to get you in motion again.
Oh God, look at the Tifosi on here, and they're coming from everywhere. They're not just Italians. We saw the Lion of Flanders there. 75 metres to go. Blimey, is there enough space for anybody up there? Well, thank goodness they've got it barriered up to this point. But look at the crowds. Oliver Zorg takes the Montagna Pantani prize. And it's down now. Carrara fighting to be the next guy up here. And he's got De Gendt with him. It's a plan. It's a plan. Thomas De Gendt has launched himself off the front and is trying to do something today. And this is going to be so difficult for anybody else to follow, Sean, because if they get away here, the fans will close in around them. They can't see how far they've got up the road. They don't know what's going on.
Yes, well, it is a strong move by De Gendt, but we can see the front end of the main bunch are just a little bit further down, so they're only 15-20 seconds off. The big problem is for De Gendt and Carrara, there's a long way to the finish, and I'm afraid this valley is going to be a difficult one. As we see Carrara now, he's done his bit, and De Gendt, we know the style of rider he is. He's not afraid to attack from a long ways out, but this one, we have the descent of 12 kilometres, and then we have that 20 kilometres in the valley, and that's going to be the killer.
Basso in trouble. Ivan Basso in trouble a little bit. Here goes Matteo Carrara. Go on! Gives him this final push. It may mean absolutely nothing, but it's the last tiny 1 or 2 watts of energy he can give over, and Carrara is spent. It's going to be a dreadfully long ride for Matteo Carrara now. Look at this. This is the front of the main group, and that is Domenico Pozzovivo. Well, he did something similar on the Passo Giao with 500 metres to go. Goodness only knows why, but he did. But they put Ivan Basso under a little bit of pressure here, Sean, and he's getting tailed off just a tiny bit. Losada looking behind him to see where his team leader Joaquim Rodriguez is, and he's not that far down. 2:56 is the gap between our leading man Oliver Zorg and the pink jersey. Brave move by Thomas De Gendt, and he's pretty handy on the descent as well, as Pozzovivo leads them up. Basso clawing his way back, gets to the rear of that little group of favourites. And over the top go this group, and still Basso is still fighting there, Sean, at the back here, and looks as if Tirolongo has made it back to that group as well. Cunego. Well, they'll be pleased to get that one out of the way, Sean, but a little dig coming from Pozzovivo, showing he's got a little bit better form today, perhaps.
Yes, I think he's warming up for the Stelvio.
I think so, yeah.
It's a good indicator that he's, pushing on a bit there. Maybe he wants to just push on that final bit of the Mortirolo and start the descent to get into a good position. But Basso, as we can see there was a number of bike lengths appearing. But no panic for Basso at the moment, because on the descent he should be able to, make his way back. And if Pozzovivo's making the descent, it'll not be a problem to get back into the group of big favourites. As we can see, Basso there, he's only 6 or 8 bike lengths off the rear of 10 or 12 of the big favourites.
Yeah, it's not a good sign, no. It's not a good sign. But you can't panic. And Basso's got enough experience to know. Ciscaino keep it rolling. This is Zorg. Who's going to put who under pressure down here, Sean? Anybody?
I don't think we will see anybody of big favourites taking the risks here and really pushing it on to put others on the limit. It's more like the guys who have just missed this group of big favourites. If you're a little bit off the rear, sometimes you make the effort and you take that bit more of a risk getting down and trying to make it back into the group, because you don't want to get caught in the valley when we get down here. As we see De Gendt, he's out there no man's land at the moment. There is riders between, so maybe he can join up with some of the guys who are in the breakaway, because he does need a number of men to get into the flat section when he get off this 12k climb. That's 20 kilometres until we get to the final climb to Stelvio. That's where you need a number of men to work with you. Otherwise, if you have to do it all on your own, you will pay big time in the final one.
Carrara coming across again. De Gendt needs him. I need you, Matteo, he says, and away he goes to try and link up with his man Thomas De Gendt, who was clearly not at full stretch on the descent here. They haven't pulled out enough of a lead, and that's what they want Carrara for. He's been worked hard today for his crust, Sean, Matteo Carrara, by the look of it.
Yes, and unfortunately he was just a little bit short of getting to the top, because that would have been the perfect situation for the team of Console and for De Gendt. If Carrara was just getting to the top and then De Gendt to join up, make the descent together, and that would be a big plus for Thomas De Gendt to have Carrara. But now he's trying to push on out of the front of the bunch, and I think that's where, maybe get a bit of reaction from some of the big favourites there, and they will just kind of try and keep in their sights, and by doing that, well, then they're only going to just close down on De Gendt and take him back into that group of pink jersey.
This is the course today, as we can see, Beno the Epica, the Telio. We are now on the Mortirolo, that long ride through the valley to Bormio and then up to the Passo di Stelvio, the highest pass in the Eastern Alps. De Gendt now has a man with him. Is that I think that is Scarponi who's with him now. So De Gendt has Carrara, Scarponi. This is a little bit interesting, Sean, because certainly, as you said, the main favourites are now pushing on. This is going to be a little bit difficult for some of them, because De Gendt and Carrara are going for it now.
Yes, going to be interesting.
Just to go here on this final massive mountain stage in the Giro d'Italia. What a 3 weeks it's been. From that sort of cagey game we had in the first 7, 8, 9 days, riding through Denmark, and the weather being so good, and it favoured riders like Pozzovivo, and it meant that we came to the big mountains with a whole group of riders who could challenge. And once again, that sort of cagey game continued, but this time on the climb. Somebody pulling out a little bit of an advantage here, then losing it the next day. It has been one of those types of Grand Tour, Sean, where it's just been nip and tuck all the way between all the big favourites, with some notable personal performances as well, like the Rubiano's win, for example, and Lars Bak. But it's been very, very tight between all the major favourites.
Well, it's been a spectacular race, and as you said, from the time we started in Denmark, the flat stages, they were really interesting and really good finals, because we had somebody in the leader's jersey who wanted to control the race, and the breakaways were just allowed out there. Some days with not much hope of going to the finish, other days looked okay, and it was touch and go if we were going to make it, but most days we see and they've been hauled back into the main bunch in the final. So a real good week, 10 days of racing. And then in the mountain stages, of course, the small uphill finishes were very interesting. But what a final we're having in this Giro once again, because here we are, penultimate day. Huisdal looking very strong, Rodriguez the leader, but a lot of other riders not outward. And this final today, as we have seen here, as we went over the Mortirolo and we go to the Stelvio, well, it's going to be a spectacular final here, certainly. And we could see surprises, and we're saying Huisdal looking the real favourite, looked a little bit under pressure there on the climb, but I think everybody was under pressure on this Mortirolo, because presented so steep, so high, everybody just fighting to get up it.
But what a revelation some riders have been, Sean. We knew Thomas De Gendt, for example, a very attacking rider, but did you really expect him to be hanging in with these big favourites after 3 weeks of racing? Or Pozzovivo, we knew what a great climber he was, but did we really expect him to come up trumps when it came to the descending and hanging on to the coattails of much more experienced men? Or Rodriguez, for example. Did we expect him to be here right at the end?
Well, as we've seen in the past with Rodriguez, he is a big champion, but in a 3-week tour he always seemed to suffer on a day where he lose a bit of time, have a day off, a day which he's not on his best shape. This he hasn't had in this Giro, and he's been remarkably strong in the big mountain stages. Huisdal, of course, he is also really the surprise of the race, the way he's riding at the moment. Pozzovivo, he's done a magnificent job staying up there, not getting caught up with crashes, getting left behind on the descent. So there's a lot of riders who has really put up special performances, and then the ones who were disappointing as well. Schleck, for example, Kluzinger were ones who were expecting to be very much in the shake-up, being here today, still very much in the general classification. So there's riders who have surprised us with their performances, and other riders who have disappointed us.
Disappointing riders, definitely. Frank Schleck would be one of them. Jose Rojano, although I can't say I was surprised personally, but that's just one of those things. Jean Gadret, another man who I'd say was a little disappointing, although he's not ridden badly, but just not great. Here's Joaquim Rodriguez. Look at the way Ryder Huisdal just marks him immediately. That was some push there, Sean, because they immediately got some space over the rest of them. At least Huisdal's got the ability to look behind and see who's there, and Scarponi's the man who drags the rest of them back up again.
Yes, we could see that they were taking control of the race there. Looked Van der Velde was setting the pace, and Rodriguez decided to up the pace a bit and just really just shake things up and see what the reaction would be. But Huisdal very quick on the wheel of Rodriguez, and we did see he gave it another little push on, but never had Huisdal in any difficulty.
This is Paolo Tirolongo face planting rather painfully. Matteo Bono couldn't really avoid him, and luckily the motorcycle could stop, but that's got to hurt. Oliver Zorg went over the top of the Montagna Pantani here in the Mortirolos, here on the Mortirolo, and is now out by himself. And we are back with you live for Nissan, for Radio Shack Nissan, Sean. It's been a very disappointing Giro d'Italia.
Yes, it has, and I suppose we mentioned just a moment ago Schleck was the one who there were big hopes to do something in the general classification. Stage victories also with these mountaintop finishes that were Radio Shack Nissan would be hoping to get some stages out of the race, and it hasn't been good at all, as we can see here. De Mol really pushing on here and motivating him a bit, but as I said, he has a number of riders coming up from behind, and they are going to be in a strong position, because when they get together, if they ride together at all, well then I think Zog will have a problem staying out in front.
As Cataldo is trying to chase back on now, having been dropped from that main group, trying to get back in touch with the main favourites as they flash through the 45 to go. This is Amador, Caruso and Serpa, who are in between Oliver Zorg and the main peloton of favourites. Chase group at 140. This is this group here we're talking about. But also looking over his shoulder, wondering where the car is. There's Dirk De Mol giving as much encouragement as he possibly can. Hey, here we go. That's the main group of favourites. And there is Christian van der Velde. A little bit distanced on the descent. How far back is he? Oh, a pretty long way back. Serpa. I could have Amador to get over there. But Van der Velde having lost a fair bit, Sean. He's going to have to chase pretty hard to get back on there.
Yes, and is he going to chase, or is he going to just come back into the main bunch now? Because I think he is in a situation possibly being called back by the director of sportif. I'd be surprised if he just finds himself alone there. He should be with some of the riders. So I'd say it's just a call from the team director. Just allow yourself to slip back and come back into the main bunch and wait and see what needs to be done for Heidal as we go through this 20 k's in the valley.
Caruso clearly looking now. Maybe he knows that Basso is by himself now and has managed to stay with this group of favourites, although he was a little bit under pressure. Cataldo has come back. Good riding by Dario Cataldo. It's a fairly big group though, Sean. What, 15 riders? 2 young Sky riders in here as well. They've done a terrific job all the way through this Giro d'Italia. That is the next generation. Both of them Colombians as well.
Yes, doing a really good job to be up here in this group of around the 15. We can see, all the favourites. The men were expecting to be up here. Most of them are here. And with Sky, 2 men up here, it's a really good performance. Also, Escatel, we can see they've got 2 in here, and we'll also see, of course, with Liquid Gas, because they've pulled their man back out in front to come back here, and also then the Garmin Barracuda rider will also join up here. So it's going to be around a 20-man group here, as we can see. Kluzinger is still in this group of big favourites.
Yes, caught up with them. This is Carrara, De Gendt, Losada. And where is the pink jersey group? That's it. Oh, what is De Gendt on about, Sean? Is he feeling attacking enough to do something on the Stelvio? It's an awful long climb for somebody like a De Gendt to have a go on, and then he's not pushing on in the valley here. They're just rolling along.
Well, it's a difficult situation for De Gendt unless he gets a number of riders with him who want to work real well, and some of them who have interest maybe in going for the stage victory. And De Gendt, of course, we know he's really thinking of the general classification, and he wants to push on, but if he has to do it all alone, well then, you know, he's going to definitely pay on the final climb. And, you know, at 8th position in the general classification, 5:40 down, he's not a threat at the moment, because we can see he's only maybe 40 seconds maximum out there in front of the group of big favourites.
Yes, Cunego has joined up with the Gendt group. That's not Kreuziger. Is that Tirolongo? Getting away from the group. Kreuziger still in that group of large favourites. And more riders making the move here. Sean trying to get away. That's Nieve. Clearly trying to get across to the De Gendt group and make some sort of attacking unit, try and push the pace on a little bit. Scarponi has Damiano Cunego in that group up ahead. But more riders, a bit of looking around going on here, Sean.
Yes, well, you know, in the situation now, who's going to control the group of big favourites? And we can see there Nieve just going in the attack. The other one from Katusha also deciding to try and get across here. And they can see that group of De Gendt up front, and it's an opportunity to try and get across to that and push on. And they know that the riders are going to look at each other, and we can see nobody wants to take up the chase at the moment.
Just the rider getting ahead of the group is Tanel Kangert. Well, he's there as a slingshot, clearly, for Roman Kreuziger. Although Kreuziger did give him a long look when he went. Cheruka is with Nieve. They all want this one, Sean. It is the real mountaintop finish that counts for anybody who's not managed to do anything so far.
Yes, and time is starting to, you know, tick out as well. We can see here, you know, 3 minutes for our leader on the road, so they're aware of that if they just sit in this group of big favourites and start watching each other, well then the advantage to Zog is going to grow out, you know, to maybe 4 minutes, something like that. And when it gets to that point, well then it's a bit too late to start trying closing it down. And we know the riders from Escatel, Nieve for example, he feels if he can get into the group, get to the bottom of the climb maybe with 2 or 3 minutes of an advantage over the big favourites, well then there's a possibility of a stage victory.
Carrara is being forced to do all the work here because Cunego is not going to add anything to this fight, neither is Losada. Cunego has Scarponi behind. Losada has the pink jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez. As far as rights go not to do any work, Sean, that's about as good as it gets, isn't it?
Yes, well, if you've got a man up the road, you can always just play that card that, you know, have a man up the road, I'm not going to ride here, and it's always down to the riders who haven't got anybody in the front group. And we see this group of favourites here, it was about 15, 17 riders. I think it's a little bit less now. There's probably 15 riders maximum, although there's a few probably have made it back in here. It's difficult to see who's going to take up the chase, and it looks like Omega Pharma are the ones who want to push on, and it's all about general classification further down as well. Yeah, exactly, because Cataldo is up there, and you know he wants to conserve his place, and he doesn't want some of the riders maybe just behind him in the general classification to move up. But at the moment, you know, you can see Nieve, for example, he's just behind Cataldo, so that's the reason probably they're working. Cataldo at 6:19 and Nieve at 6:28, so it's very tight there between those places, 12th and 13th place. And at this stage of the race, you know, the very final days, that's what they start looking at. This team start thinking of their places and their man in the general classification.
Under 40 kilometres to go then now in this stage 20 of the Giro d'Italia, from Caldes Val di Sol to the Passo dello Stelvio, the highest point ever finished at in the Giro d'Italia. So far today, a group of 13 riders went away early on, went over the Passo di Tonali, the Aprica and the Telio. The Tonale, a second category climb with 9 points on offer. Then Aprica and Telio. This is Pozzo Vivo we're seeing on our screen. Looks a little bit distanced. And working his way back up through he's had a mechanical. Not a good place to have it. Oh, he went over the Basso della Tonale, the Aprica and the Telio. The Aprica and Telio were 5 points apiece for third category climbs. And the second category Tonale, who's now got a problem? Is that Caruso? Has a problem now. And it looks like it. Damiano Caruso needing a new bike as well. Ooh. Euskaltel car just getting in the way of the progress of Damiano Caruso. He's going to have to try and get back to the group that contains his team leader Ivan Basso. In the breakaway this morning were Bono from Lampre, Serpa from Androni, Kreuziger from Astana again, yesterday's victor, Frank from BMC, Rabottini, the mountains classification leader from Farnese Vini. He started the day on 65 points ahead of Stefano Perazzi on 44. As all the big favourites just slowing the pace down now. And so the battle was on. Rabottini got the maximum points in the first 3 climbs and secured that mountains classification jersey, assuming he finishes, of course. Van der Velde from Garmin Barracuda up there for his team leader. The man in the middle of your shot there. The man most threatening to Joaquim Rodriguez and everybody else. It's Ryder Hajjdal. Losada in the break from Katusha for the team, his team leader and leader of the race, Joaquim Rodriguez. Caruso from Liquid Gas there for Basso. Samala from Movistar. Clement and Schlachter from Rabobank. It came to nothing, unfortunately. The man trying to chase on desperately here now is Johan Chop. Or has he gone away? Chop was in that little group of favourites. He's got Matthias Frank, I think, helping him now. Clement and Schlachter from Rabobank. Oliver Zorg, who was in your shift. They've come out of the front of that group. Oliver Zorg was the rider from Radio Shack Nissan in the break, and he's gone up the road by himself. And Matteo Carrara from Vacon Soleil. As they got to the third of the climbs today, the fearsome Mortirolo with slopes of 22% in it. It's just detonated because it was all, as Zorg went away from the group, it was all down to what was happening behind with the favourites. Just rolling along, no real problems, and then all of a sudden Joaquim Rodriguez goes bang, off he goes up the road, and it forced a split in the peloton, and all the big favourites, about 15, 16 of them, managed to make that junction. Hajjdal immediately on his wheel, and Scarponi reacting, pulling everybody up alongside. But it's really, really splitting to pieces now as Cataldo goes on the dig with 40 kilometres to go. This is all falling to pieces, Sean, in terms of a coherent unit. There are people fighting behind. Cataldo is going off after Johan Chop, of course. There's 1 second that separates them, and because Chop has got a man up the road already with Matthias Frank, he's trying to preserve that place. Cataldo started at 12th place, Johan Chop at 11th place, and it comes to this now, Sean. Or, as you were saying, all these riders now looking at each other and seeing what on earth they're going to do.
Yes, and we also see Navy, who's got out of the group here, so all that classification, the top 15 riders, and the big problem is we can see here the group of big favourites, Hajjdal, they've just totally stopped here. They're rolling along at a very slow pace, and we could see the 2 riders from BMC also getting away, because they know that there's rivalry between the big riders here, and it's the moment to try and get away. And like, we have a huge amount of riders just got out of that group of favourites, and it's going to be an interesting one. The big thing is now how far the groups are behind, and Hajjdal, how long is he going to have to wait? Rodriguez, for example, is their teammates coming up to him, because they need some manpower here to push this one along. As we can see, 5:44 to a leader of the road.
It's getting dangerous. We don't know how far back. We need to look at how far back De Gendt is, but he's pushing on, and he's about 5 or so minutes down in the GC. Coming up to the 35 kilometre to go mark, and you could see the group of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 there, including Thomas De Gendt and Matteo Carrara, who've really pushed the pace along there. They've been joined by Michael Nieve and a teammate as well, and Damiano Cunego hanging on to the back of those two. Both Tirolongo and Cunego are behind. So this is the group with Carrara, De Gendt, Cunego, Losada and Amador. Just right at the back is Jose Sapa. Nieve is almost upon them, Sean. And Michael Nieve starting the day at 6:28. Cataldo is chasing, Johan Chop is chasing. It's the places 12, 13 and 14, 11, 12 and 13 that are fighting for place, and between them there's less than 20 seconds.
Yes, there's a lot of movement there in that general classification. Cunego also is, there and in a very strong position. So there's quite a number of riders who could do well out of this. But again, we can see there Cunego at 154 on our leader on the road, Zog, and 541 back to the main group of big favourites. And we can see that, still they haven't been anybody just prepared to commit here, and it's going to be exciting to see how long more will they ride along with this, because this gap is growing out. And we can see this group up front with the Cunego group with Navy joining up. It's getting bigger, but for the moment it's only the Vacansoleil rider Carrara who is setting the pace.
This is the 149 between Chop and the Cunego group here. 5:38 back to the pink jersey group, so 4 minutes essentially. 3:50 between Cunego and the pink jersey group. Gosh, this is getting very, very interesting indeed. De Gendt is the best placed man in the group. They're going to have to be careful. Chop being dragged along by Matthias Frank with Herbert Dupont, Cataldo. These guys are chasing to try and get to that group as well. Very interesting point and very apposite made by Stage Hopper and Alpine Deep, almost for one after another. The two Sky Boys aren't going to ride either, Sean, because they're not that far down on the GC, but, well, they're not going to ride at the moment, but there must be in the back of the mind somewhere that if they let these guys go up the road, there's the points jersey at stake as well.
Well, yes, and I don't think the points jersey is what's in their minds. They're thinking of their place in general classification, and surprising they have missed it here, because they could have made a move here and try and get into some of these attacks, getting away. There was an opportunity there to do that. I think they could have tried to slip into a group and get up the road, but unfortunately not. And we can see there, there's so much happening now in between Azog, our leader on the road, and then we have a number of groups really chasing, and we can see the BMC riders Frank and Chop really pushing on as well. So they all have something to gain. Vacansoleil, of course, with De Gendt, they have a real good position here. They could move up in the general classification, and the more time they pull out on this section, well, then that will give them that bit of comfort as we get to the final climb, because they need to get 2.5 minutes on the chasing group of big favourites to hang on and to make any inroads in general classification.
Absolutely. Oliver Zorc looking now as though it's all catching up with him. Well, Matteo Carrara has nothing left in the tank. He's gone. As Izagirre was the other rider with the chasing group. Amador, there we are. Izagirre, Damiano Cunego, De Gendt, Cunego. De Gendt is the best placed man in this chasing group behind Oliver Zorc. De Gendt 5 minutes and 40 back. And Sean, they've got 4 minutes nearly already. It's being held at the moment, but Christian van der Velde has been clearly called back here, because there's nobody in that group of favourites still for, well, at the moment anyway, for the general classification man Ryder Hagedal. We don't know, Peter Stettner may make it back to that group because they're going super slow. But the gap is still increasing, Sean.
Yes, it is increasing, and we can see they're not getting organised. The question is, Garmin Barracuda, we had Van der Velde. Where is he?
We've just seen him come back behind the Cataldo group.
Yes,
there.
but he's taking a long time to come back. I would say, the best thing to do is stop him on the road, just put him to a stop and make him wait until that group of big favourites come along and start working, because for Heidal is getting a situation now where we could see this group growing massively, and some of the guys up here, Neve for example, I know he's at 6 minutes, but still, who's going to do the chase on the final climb? If you have to start working on the front of the bunch, the beginning of the final climb of the day, 22 kilometres, it's much too early. You're going to maybe pay later on.
But you see that there's the group in between trying to get across to the De Gendt group with Cataldo and Chop in here. Dupont is also there. But when you look back at the big favourites group, Sean, it looks like Scarpone's got 2 men there now. It looks like Basso's got 2 men there as well. Heidal's got a man on the front as well now, so they can now maybe start all working together. Brave move, good move, clever move by Thomas De Gendt, whether he'll, and some of the others, Nieve. Will they actually be able to pull anything out here? Nieve is got his man Izagirre on the front. Cunego's going to do absolutely nothing because Scarpone is third in the GC and is behind him, so he's just going to take the ride here. But it was all detonated by Thomas De Gendt, who's attacked just over the top of the climb. Macho Corrara's done a very good job today, Sean, because he couldn't stay with him right over the top, gave him a bit of a shove, sent him on his way, and when he got over the top, then he started to regain contact.
Yes, and actually was caught by the main group of big favourites, and Matteo Corrara just pushed it on the descent, went across to Thomas De Gendt again, and just pushed on, and he's after doing a huge amount of work, and he certainly was really valuable to Thomas De Gendt. But we can see out in front at the moment this group of Cunego, De Gendt, they are really eating into the advantage of our leader on the road, Zog, 42 seconds only, and that's where it's real difficult on your own in the valley here. It's a real killer, and Zog have really paid the price here. He's lost a huge amount of time. As the group just got bigger of Cunego, we see that they've been joined up by the 2 Escatel riders as well, and it's only a number of kilometres before he's going to be pulled back in.
Nasty rough surface. That's Matthias Frank, who has gone. Johan Chop is now leading the charge, and Van der Velde, Stetner, both together sitting on the front working for Ryder Heidal. I've got fingers crossed for the young Canadian, Sean, but he did look a little under pressure on the Mortirolo, and he's going to have to work very hard to try and cut down the gap now. The gap is 4 minutes, and everybody's going to let him do it. I think the pink jersey's not too worried at the moment. They're going to let him do it.
Well, I don't think the situation he's in now, he must be pretty okay, because we can see there out to the leader on the road is 4:45, a fraction under, and he has 2 men to do the pace setting, so that gap will stabilise and come down a bit. So for Heidal it's not a problem. When we get to the final climb, I think there will be action on that anyway, and if he can just keep the situation as is at the moment, I think it's under control. It was looking dangerous there, because finding himself with nobody, and Van der Velde was the one I was wondering how he took so long to come back. Stetida, he also came up from behind, so he had one coming in from behind and one from the front, and I think for Garmin, the situation is under control at the moment, but it's all down to the final climb, because the big favourites are going to be attacks, and Pozzoviva, how long will he stay in the bunch, because now he's a long ways back for stage victory. It's going to be a difficult one unless he attacking the earlier slopes of the climb.
Maybe Dirk de Mol saying just keep it rolling until these guys come up, because they've got so much to play for, some of these men in here. that if you can hang in this group and you've still got some energy left, you're clearly climbing better than most of them. Wait, then go for the victory a little later on if you can, if you have it in you. So maybe that's a tactic to bring Oliver Zorg, or let him just ease up a little bit if he's suffering a little bit by himself, and attack onto the back of this group or within this group and start recovering, and then see what he can do on the last climb of the day. Nothing to lose. They've got nothing at all to lose. They might as well think about it. Nieve and Izagirre are pushing on. De Gendt getting a little bit of a break, which is good. Here's Macho Carrara did an awful lot of work, and now it's Euskaltel taking up the challenge here. De Gendt now comes to the front to do some. Daniel Canget's going to do nothing behind, and neither's Cunego. Canget has Kreuziger and Tirolongo both want to go for stage victory. Kreuziger certainly has been in the break once already today. Will he be able to get on? So this is the thing. Here he goes. It's shifting. Cunego's going to do nothing at all. The Scarponi is in there. Amador's got into this break well, and the team classification is what Movistar are playing for, and a victory, of course, on the stage if they can. 30 kilometers to go. Well, of course, it's if Ryder Hagedal's got two men on the front, Sean, and they're committed, they're still going to ride hard, which leaves a little bit more freedom for the other favourites in the race to follow. How much psychological pressure will Hagedal feel under here?
Well, I think he should not be under pressure, because he's not going to have to do the riding. It's his teammates, and if they can get him to the bottom of the climb, the position they're in at the moment, I think they have it pretty much under control. For Hagedal, then it's a situation like who is going to do the riding on the climb itself, and the attacks. You have to be, able to follow the attacks. And if he's got the legs as he had yesterday, he should not have a problem. But this is, a real killer of a climb. 22 kilometres, the altitude over 2,700 metres at the summit, and you can be open to start to suffer when you get up to that 2,000 plus of an altitude, and a lot of riders have difficulty, and when you have to go another 700 metres, we could see some of the guys that looked so good yesterday, they could have difficulty today.
The final 22 kilometres of this race are all uphill. The Passo di Stelvio, the highest finish ever in the Giro d'Italia, the place where the Cima Coppi is, the prize that celebrates the great Fausto Coppi, Campionissimo as they still call him. And Oliver Zorg is back in this little group here, and a brave move by De Gendt, Nieve, especially to try and get away here and put some time into the general classifications. They've got nothing to lose, but the men benefiting at the moment from not having to do anything are Damiano Cunego and Daniel Canget. 28 kilometres to go. The gap is coming down, Sean, with the riding of Ryder Hagedal's Garmin Barracuda squad. Peter Stettner and Christian van der Velde on the front doing the shutdown job.
Yes, and of course Stettner, Van der Velde, two real good, strong, powerful riders, and they can keep this under control, take the advantage of our group out in front, our 7 leaders. Take that advantage down quite a bit before we get to the climb. Still 27.8 kilometres to go, so a number of kilometres more. And how long will they be able to continue on the climb? They might be able to do a number of kilometres, and if that is the case, well, then they will rectify the situation. And for Van der Velde, he's in a position where it's all up to himself from there on in this final climb of the day. When the big favourites start to attacking, this group will just disintegrate immediately. If we have a Pozzovivo who go in the attack and some of the other favourites want to follow, this group will just blow to pieces immediately.
30 kilometres to go for the group of main favourites, with Ryder Hagedal sitting in second there with Christian van der Velde working on the front, so Peter Stedden has done all he can now. Van der Velde was in the breakaway. Initially they'd have expected him to be, or hoped for him to be joined up with a little bit further on and give his all, but he's doing a grand job. Called back from the breakaway. Izagirre, winner of a stage, piles in, and this is Jose Serpa. 5 for him. Spends a lot of time in breaks, Sean, but he hasn't really made a breakthrough win in a big tour yet.
No, and when you look at the breakaway he was in today, you know, he should be able to stay up there with this group of Cunego and De Gendt, but not able to follow, I think, just running out of power and running out of power much too early.
Yep. 26.5 kilometres. Oh, the countdown is interminable. Ouch. That's where they're heading. Izagirre is doing a good job. It's fairly evenly matched at the moment, Sean, between Van der Velde and Izagirre, although Nieve is adding some firepower, as is De Gendt. They've all got a vested interest in this. Piling on the pressure. Izagirre coming along. They're working quite well together here, but Kangert's going to do nothing. 3 against 1 at the moment, Sean.
Yes, and we can see Cunego also just sitting here, and the guys who do the riding here, it's going to be difficult for them. De Gendt pushing on there, and of course Neve, the ones who want to do something on the stage itself. If you have to ride at this point, well, you need to be real strong to hang in there all the way up this final climb.
The leading group on the road is at Val di Sotto. 25.5 kilometres to go. They have a gap of 3 minutes and 43 on this group here, the pink jersey group. And at the moment, it is Garmin Barracuda who are doing the chase work, and they're almost upon this group that tried to get away. Dario Cataldo, Herbert Dupont, Johan Chop in this group, Serge Pauls, and the hard-working Matteo Carrara. Up ahead, Nieve and De Gendt are the best placed man on the attack. Riding the coattails of that, because he has nothing to do, is Damiano Cunego. Scarponi in this pink jersey group here, and so Cunego needs to do absolutely nothing. De Gendt, just noticed in that front group, he did a turn on the front and then he dropped almost all the way to the back, thinking, got to conserve some energy, got to let somebody else do the work. And it seems to be that Izagirre and Nieve will continue on the way. So De Gendt saving a little bit of his power, Sean, by just dropping back into the group, right towards the back, and you know, is taking his time and working his way back up again.
Yes, and well, for De Gendt, if you continue on working on the front of this group, really pushing it on, you're guaranteed to suffer on the climb. 22 kilometres. Stelvio, you know, it's the real killer, and Neve is the one which is surprising me. He seems to be pushing on big time. Izagirre, I'd understand he can ride because he's just up there to do a job and get him to the bottom of this climb with as much time advantage as possible. Cunego is just getting a free ride here, and he's been tied along, and he's definitely going to try something on the final climb, but the advantage, as we see, 3:49 at the moment. I'm not sure if it will be enough unless the big favourites start to really look at each other and nobody want to take the chase in the first 6 or 8 kilometres of the climb. Then they might be able to hold on to that 3:50, which will be, you know, 3.5 minutes when we start the climb. They need to hold on to that 10-12 kilometres before the finish, otherwise it's going to come down real quickly. And is there somebody going to attack in the very earlier parts of this long climb to the Stelvio, 22 kilometres?
It's going to all come down to this climb on the Stelvio. This man here, Ryder Hedgedal, who's looked incredibly strong all the way through, getting some food on board, needs to keep a wary eye on Thomas De Gendt. We must not forget that De Gendt is a good time trialist. And he will push Ryder Hajdal quite hard. The time trial is only over 30 kilometres, Sean, but De Gendt can race against the clock. Unlike Nieve here, who's not anywhere near as good a time trialist. I would say De Gendt is probably better than Scarponi, better than Basso, certainly better than Rodriguez, and is closest to Hajdal of the people who are up here in time trialing ability.
Well, he can do some good time trials. He can also do some disappointing ones at the end of a 3-week tour. It's all about how much you have left in the tank, and De Gendt seems to be the one who is very aggressive, because going out in the attack here, such a long ways from the finish, it's a big risk to take. And when you have to ride like he's been riding there in that group, if you're in a group of 10 or 12 guys and you can sit on the rear like Cunego is doing, perfect situation, you get to the bottom of the climb that bit fresher. But De Gendt has been putting in a big effort, and I don't think with the time advantage at the moment, just over the 350 back to the group of big favourites. I think for De Gendt, the possibility of move up in the general classification, that is possible, but for the overall victory, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, because on the final climb, I can't see him doing anything but lose time to the big favourites and to Hajdal and to all the other favourites as well.
In the time trial, do you think? I mean, against a Rodriguez, do you think he's going to be a worse time trial than Rodriguez tomorrow?
Well, that's where he is. In the other places, he can move up in the general classification, but for the overall win, he's too far off in the general at the moment. That's 540, but he can make good inroads to the general classification and move up quite a bit from the place he's in at the moment of 8th place. He can certainly do better on that.
This is what they say for virtual standings. If it finished right now, Thomas De Gendt would have moved himself up to within 146 of Rodriguez. 3:56 is almost the 4-minute mark for these men up here. And they are almost upon the climb itself. Well, they are at the start of it. So, fasten your seatbelts. If you haven't made a cup of tea, it's too late. There will be no tea time now. For the next 22.5 kilometres, you are here and nowhere else. Forget the football or anything else, rugby, whatever else you've been watching, cricket, forget it. This is where it's at. It's the Giro d'Italia. 4 minutes is the advantage that these men have here. Izagirre and Nieve of Euskaltel, Thomas De Gendt of Vacansoleil, Cunego just riding along happily for the Lampre squad. Oliver Zorg, who was out there for quite a while, has linked up with them, and they're just wheeling along and pulling out a gap over all the big favourites who let them go. They almost came to a standstill, and Hajdal looks under the cosh to me. He does not look happy. He didn't look happy on the Mortirolo. I just get that feeling. I may be completely wrong, but he just looks a little bit under pressure here. Gadre up in this group. He's got 2 men with him as well. Moreno with his pink jersey wearing team leader Joaquim Rodriguez, and Basso is a little bit further back, as is Scarponi. Yes indeed, lots of people saying, what if I need to have a pee? Do it like a bike rider, hang off the side of the sofa. Four minutes, and they're on the Passo di Stelvio. Sean, I get a nasty feeling for Ryder Hajdal here. He doesn't look comfortable to me at all.
Well, if he's not comfortable at the moment, we will see him in difficulty on this climb. But again, how comfortable are the other favourites?
Well, exactly, but
I think Rodriguez was the one who, showed good signs on the other big climb of the day, the Mortirolo, and he, just put in a few testers of attacks there. Again, if he is feeling like that, he will try something on this climb, because he has to do it, race leader at the moment, but with Hajdal at 17 seconds, and we've talked about this, the time trial tomorrow, that's where he suffers big time, and he need to take a lot of time out of Huisdal, and if he sees the opportunity that Huisdal is in difficulty, starting to suffer, Rodriguez, well, there's nothing to do, only attack and just go for it. And who else will attack out of this group? Pozzovivo, what will he do? Will he attack and try and get across to this leading group of 7 riders? Under 4 minutes at the moment. It is possible, because 22 kilometres, I think he's capable of closing that down on this climb. If he's capable of going early, if he's got the power, if he feels good enough to attack very early on this Stelvio.
2 men for Astana, who've been the main protagonist for the team. Roman Koisinger, yesterday's stage winner, then stage 7 winner Paolo Tiralongo. They're both in this group, and the gap is not coming down at the moment. 20 kilometres to go, and we're on this long drag up the Stelvio. Now Nieve and De Gendt will have to work together. There'll have to be some alliance here, Sean. They'll know they have to work together instinctively. And it's just going to be those two, really. And the rest are just going to sit there.
Yes, as they have been doing. It's not going to change now on the climb. It will not change in the 4th kilometres. If Nieve and again keeps a good pace, I can't see the other ones attacking. But again, will Cunego, will he start to panic? He'll know that's around the 4 minutes of advantage. He will be making the calculation. If he's feeling good, and if he's not feeling good now, he's not going to ever feel good, because he's got towed along in this valley for 20 plus kilometres, and that is a huge advantage. If you haven't got to do the pulling on the front, you can sit in the slipstream, you conserve a lot of energy there.
Peter Stettner is absolutely burying himself here, and Van der Velde can sense it. He needs to keep the pace high. He moves around the outside, I think, of Stettner, just as our shot cuts to the leading riders here. Andre Amador, Nieve, Tanel Kangat, the Estonian rider, and Damiano Cunego. Here's rider Huisdal. Oh, the pace is relentlessly high. They've cut down another 10 seconds here. Koisinger looking good again today. Stettner's done what he can, I think. There's not much more he can do now. He needs to get some fluids on board. Clearly, Alan Piper will have been saying something like, well, if you think you can get back up there, do some more. But I don't think that's going to be the case anymore, Sean, for Peter Stettner. I think he's done everything he can.
Well, unless they need some fresh drinks for their main man, Huisdal. If that is the case, well, then it's possible that he's going to do that, because we're getting to the point now where it's going to be very difficult. The car will not be allowed, but I think we should see some of the team members giving up bottles on the earlier slopes of the climb.
Lì ci sono scritte le più belle pagine del ciclismo, soprattutto del Giro d'Italia.
Valerio Piva saying that Stelvio is one of the legendary places, one of the greatest places in Giro history. So, to finish the Stelvio is a dream.
Sono direttore sportivo, avere la maglia rosa sulle spalle.
At least to get there in pink, it's a dream for every athlete. But as long as I can see the pink jersey on Joaquim's shoulders, I think is what he said, it's good enough for me. There is Joaquim Rodriguez. Saved himself very well yesterday, Sean, and managed to nip around the outside of Michele Scarponi, as beginning to slip a little here, Juan Antonio Fletcher. 3:47. That gap is not coming down a tremendous amount, Sean.
No, it's not coming down a big amount, but again, do they really need to push it down before the climb itself. Maybe it's a calculation, just keep on riding at a good pace, but be sure that you can get to the bottom of the climb with your leader. And probably from Garmin, Van der Velde's probably asked to make sure that you just do not give it too much, because the advantage and the calculation they'll be making 3:45 at the moment, that's okay. We can afford to allow the group out in front have that starting the Stelvio climb, but you need to be able to get our man into the earlier kilometres of the climb, and so I reckon it's a calculation at the moment.
3:45 is the gap at the moment, 18.5 kilometres to go. They're on the Stelvio. This climb is very steep towards the top, Sean, but it's all about the distance, this one, and the altitude. We go up to 2,757 feet. 20 kilometres to go for the group of the pink jersey and Ryder Hojdahl sitting behind Christian Van der Velde here. Thomas De Gendt is up the road. He started the morning at 5 minutes and 40 seconds down. So far, he's 3:40 up. So he'll go within 2 minutes of the pink jersey if it were to stop now. Good riding by De Gendt and Nieve, of course, who's in this front group. But this one is all about this relentless. I mean, they're going super fast on here, Sean. They really are. But it'll get harder and harder and harder to breathe.
Yes, and we're just in the very earlier slopes of the climb, and the gradient, it just starts to build up gradually. It picks up a bit at points, but it's really when you get to the top of the climb, that's where it's real steep, and they're doing a good job at the moment. Keep the pace quite high, and that suits Garmin and the other big favourites. They're not going to attack at this point. They're going to wait, until the final 10-12 kilometres. I think that is the point where we could see them starting to up their game.
Well, Van der Velde, what is the tactic? I mean, they're trying to obviously limit the gap, Sean. At what point does Ryder Hojdahl look around at all the other guys and say, especially Joaquin Rodriguez, and say, come on guys, you're under threat too?
Well, I think as long as Van der Velde can continue making the pace, they're just going to leave it at that. And we can see Van der Velde there, he isn't giving it 100%, and he just wants to last as long as possible here. And it'll be interesting now to see how long can he get up this climb with all the big favourites in his wheel. Certainly there's they need him there as long as possible, because the moment he comes off the front, well, then you're very open to an attack from the likes of Pozzovivo. Slows down a bit, or some of the other riders, they could start attacking, and I don't think Hojdahl like that sudden attacking a lot of it. He is able to match it, but again, he just a steady pace is the best way to get up this very long one.
And he's doing a very good job, Christian Van der Velde. Look, he's taken out nearly 20 seconds now from that lead of the Nieve and De Gendt group. Well, the rest of the favourites will be pleased about that as well. Gap is beginning to come down. That's where we're headed up to at the top, the very top box on your screen. The Passo di Stelvio. And 3 minutes and 35 seconds is now the gap between Thomas De Gendt and Michael Nieve. Cunego is also in that group as well. He's just taking the ride at the moment. And it won't be until much further up the slope, assuming that nobody bridges the gap or the gap doesn't come down any further short. It will be much further up before Amador and well, I was going to say Canget, it's not going to happen, but Amador, for example, takes a bit more of a lead and starts working hard with them to keep the gap going.
Yes, and I think Amador, I'd be surprised if he hangs in very long here. He's been out there for quite a bit as well. It's a difficult situation as it comes down to 3 minutes 30 at the moment, and Cunego, we could see him maybe having difficulty waiting that long, because with the group coming up, you need to try and push on, and if it's not going fast enough for him in the front group, well, then he will have to attack. If he's thinking of stage victory with the bunch of big favourites closing down to 3:30, well, then it's not.
Thomas De Gendt is pushing on, and Nieve is trying to go with him, but back in the group of favourites. Sean, did you notice Van der Velde no longer on the front by the look of it? It looks like Ryder Hijsdal's by himself.
Yes, well, I'm not surprised that he's after peeling off the front, because he's been riding in the valley for a long time, and now it's going to be interesting to see what will happen in the main peloton of favourites, as we see Cunego starting to suffer, which is surprising considering he has got a very easy ride into the climb here, but doesn't look like that he's got the legs today.
He's back on again. Maybe it was just a shot that we got, just a shot of Hijsdal's head there rather than anything else. Oh, Cunego fighting to maintain some sort of contact, and De Gendt and Nieve continue on their way. Amador, as you suggested, Sean, goes pop. Still the gap is coming down a little bit. Terrific job being done by Christian Van der Velde. It's the pink jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez sitting behind Michele Scarponi. Fabio Fellin in your shot. Gosh, he looks almost completely dead-eyed, doesn't he? Totally out of it. What will be the discussions here, Sean, at some point? There's a little look from De Gendt saying, are you going to come through and do some work? And just a little bit of took some time to react to that, Mikko Nieve, but they do need to continue working together.
Well,
if they can.
Yes, they have to continue working together, but they are the ones who's been doing it for a long time, and they've got Cunego in difficulty, and that will give him a little bit of a morale boost, because he's the one who's been sitting on, as I said. So you would be a little bit concerned that he might start attacking you when you get to the 15 kilometre to go mark, but when he gets into difficulty on the earlier slopes, there's not a lot of tactic to decide up here between Gendt and Nieve. They just have to keep on sharing the pace setting, keep on working at it as strong as possible, and see can they hold on and to this advantage of 3:20 at the moment. And it will slow down when Van der Velde will eventually peel off the front. There could be a moment where the favourites start looking at each other, and this gap maybe could grow out a little bit more, and that's what our two leaders will be hoping, because coming down to 3 minutes at the moment, it's going to be very difficult to see them holding on.
Yep, it is now. What a terrific job has been done by Christian Van der Velde. I mean, he's just been on there for kilometre after kilometre now, Sean, and it's one man against two, essentially. And he has done a wonderful job. He's taken out for 35 seconds or more on these leading two, De Gendt and Nieve. Izagirre gets taken back. And there is Pozzovivo. Just have a quick look at the profile. This is what they've been over today. The Passo di Tonale, the Aprica, Telio, Mortirolo and Passo dello Stelvio. On the Tonale, Aprica and Telio, it was Matteo Rabottini who took the maximum points and did a very good job to get in the breakaway today for the Mountains classification jersey, taking the fight away, or snuffing out, shall we say, the flame of Stefano Perazzi, who didn't make it to the break today. Sandy Cassar yesterday's breakaway companion with Perazzi, most dischuffed with his behaviour, turning to him and saying, this isn't a small race in Italy, this is the Giro. I think you're playing at. But anyway, in the end, neither of them won the stage. 3:32, the gap is going out a little bit again, Sean.
Yes, and I think Van der Velde is just starting to slow it a little bit, and again, it's not not a problem for them. If he can just keep on riding, and if there's a little bit slowed down the pace, that's not the main problem for the moment. Just keep on working as we come to the 15 kilometres to go. If he can continue on for another number of kilometres, well, then he'll be after doing an unbelievable job here.
Absolutely incredible job by Christian van der Velde, and the riders being whittled down little by little by little. This is the suffering Damiano Cunego. In the standings at 6 minutes and 9 seconds, just going to have to ride his own pace here. 3:35 with 15 kilometres to go. It's Thomas De Gendt, who started the day at 5 minutes and 40 seconds, who's slightly unexpectedly, I should think, Sean, well, certainly for us here in the commentary boat, animated today's stage. He attacked just before the summit of the Mortirolo, and Matteo Carrara was ahead up the road, gave him as much help as he could getting to the summit, and then rejoined him on the descent, and he did work very hard to pull out the gap, Sean, on the valley. Did a very good job of it.
Yes, he did a real strong ride, and De Gendt is the one who's been out there all the valley, and of course we see Navy, he came up a bit later with another group, so not being out there as long, and but still has been in that group, and it was 6 or 7 riders. Navy also was doing a lot of the pushing along, and both of them are doing a real strong ride. Navy, of course, we know him for his climbing ability. He would be, for me, the better climber, but De Gendt, he is just unbelievable shape in this race, the way he's performing, and again today going out a long ways out and having a go, and still looking very strong at the moment, and the advantage, as you can see, 3:55, so it's growing out a bit.
Is Van der Velde gone? No, he's still there.
It will be interesting to see how how the reaction will be when we will lose this man Van der Velde off the front of the group. If there's a time where the favourites do not start riding, well then this gap could go out to maybe 5 minutes, and in that case, as we get under 15 kilometres to go for our 2 leaders, is looking quite interesting at the moment.
Over 4 minutes, the gap has spun out again. Van der Velde was doing a fabulous job, and it has slowly disappeared again. Now Roman Cunego, yesterday's winner, slips to the back of this main favourites group. 14.5 kilometres to go. It's around the 4-minute mark, the gap now. And Van der Velde has been riding for kilometre after kilometre after kilometre, looking after Ryder Hesjedal. And still the main favourite sits behind. Basso is shepherded by Damiano Caruso, is again doing another fabulous ride. Rigoberto Urán and Sergio Enyo still sitting in here. Another wonderful ride by the 2 men from Sky. Scarponi by himself. Cunego is up the road, but I'm not sure he's going to be any help for him if he ever gets there. 3:52. Tempo by Van der Velde. Little grit of the teeth. And these are our 2 men leading on the road at the moment. Thomas De Gendt and Mikel Nieve. And clawing his way back up with about 7 seconds of a gap now is Damiano Cunego. Joaquim Rodriguez, he's looked in this sort of relaxed, not so relaxed, but just easy, not so worried state for the last 2 or 3 times we've seen him in the mountains. But what is going through your mind, Sean, do you think, if you're in the pink jersey? Well, you've been in leaders' jerseys in Grand Tours. You've won one of them. Tell us, what goes through your mind when you see something like this happening up the road?
Well, you just said to yourself, it is going to be a real difficult one. There's going to be a lot of pain dished out, but everybody is going to get some of that, and you just say to yourself, everybody else must be suffering as well. If you are suffering a bit, and everybody have to be suffering here after what we've been over today and 3 weeks on the road. There's a certain amount of pain that everybody is in here, and you just say to yourself, well, they are no better than me, and you just keep on, convincing yourself that. And every bit you get further up the climb, well, then there's an advantage. That you're getting closer to the finish. But again, from experience, the feeling, sometimes you have a great feeling. You're sitting here in this group and you're totally, you're relaxed, you're under no pressure at all. Other times you can feel it a bit, it's hurting that bit more. And when that is the case, well, then you're a little bit concerned, but you just try and say to yourself, the other ones are also have to be suffering. They've been on the road for 3 weeks also.
It's pretty much even Stevens, isn't it, here, Sean? Because this does ramp the Stelvio. It just gets a bit of a steeper pitch, then evens out. Steeper pitch, evens out a little bit. And we can see this gap growing out to closer to 4 minutes, then contracting and growing out. And that really is just an indication of the way that the topography is working at that time. They're pretty much evenly paced.
Yes, and we can see, I think our 2 leaders up front, they may be slowing a little bit because Cunego, he was losing contact 3 kilometres ago, and now he's just coming back, so maybe our 2 leaders are starting to tire. And I'm not surprised because Neve have been riding a long time in the valley, and Thomas De Gendt, they really rode full on in the valley, and you're going to pay for that at a certain time on this climb, a 22 kilometre climb. I think it's starting to hit our 2 leaders, and Cunego is clawing his way back in, and the bunch still, that's advantage. It's 3:45 as we get to the 13 kilometres to go, and nobody wanting to go in the attack out of the peloton, and that tells me that they're all happy with the pace being set by Van der Velde for the moment.
Thomas De Gendt really hit the screens, our screens, all you viewers at home, in the Tour of Britain a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. It was a terrific performance there, and then went to Paris-Nice last year, Sean, with a terrific run of form. And we thought, well, how good is this guy after all? And again this year at Paris-Nice, he wasn't right up there challenging at the very top, but he won a magnificent lone stage across the mountains as well, so we knew he can climb. But this Giro has put him in a different league.
Yes, and we knew he could climb the stages he had won, and the breaks, the solo breakaways, or a group of 5-6 riders. He has been able to do that in the races, and unbelievably powerful to stay on out for plus 200 kilometres. And in Paris-Nice won a magnificent stage into Nice this year over very difficult terrain. But in a Tour of Italy is a total different menu altogether.
Absolutely.
The big mountains, and he has really surprised me the way he's getting through. We did see him after 10 days of racing, but I said when he gets to the big mountains he will start paying a little bit in the real high ones where they go for 15-20 kilometres, but not at all. He's just getting real strong and just riding the race of his life.
Certainly is. He dispatched Rein Taramai, the Estonian, in that solo win. And he's gone. Is he gone? He's gone. Thomas De Gendt has gone from the other 2. I mean, not gone backwards, gone forwards. Attack of Thomas De Gendt against the rest. He knows that the gap has to go out a little bit further, and Nieve doesn't have it. Wow. Oh, there'll be all sorts of talk when they get back to Belgium. It'll be, is this the new cannibal? De Gendt goes on the attack, and the director sportives will have seen that on their television sets in the cars and gone, you know what, he's just done it again. Started the day at 5 minutes and 40 seconds down, and at the moment he's dishing out the pain, and the favourites, I'm not sure they know quite what to do, because Ryder Hesjedal is still following Christian Van der Velde here. Tomorrow's time trial in Milan, only over 30 kilometres, but De Gendt is good. I'm not sure I quite agree with Sean about his ability to just go up in the general classification a bit. I don't think he's after that. I think he's after the win here. And if he can go for the whole thing, he will. Difficult to see him taking 140 if he's got 4 minutes at the top. Difficult to see him taking 140 out of Hajidal, but even so, or anybody else for that matter. Rodriguez is the pink jersey wearer. Mustn't forget that. He's still the man to beat here. 3:47. Van der Velde just doing a magnificent job. It's a very, very skilled job, just pegging that gap back, riding at a good tempo so you don't destroy, if you've got the legs, you don't destroy your team leader. Cunego's got to try and do it all over again. Having got back to Nieve and De Gendt, he's going to go and do it all over again, Sean.
Well, we can see Cunego. He's just on his limit there on the climb, and the moment that anybody ups the pace a little bit, he just loses contact once again. And
getting closer to the 4-minute mark again. Sean's still fairly stable, but De Gendt, I think, realizing that Nieve was under tiny bit of pressure there to keeping the pace, and he's just had to go for it himself.
Well, if you're feeling still feeling good, and you know, when you look at the situation, coming to 11 kilometers to go, 4 minutes in advantage, you have to keep it going, give it your 100% at this point. But depending on how you're feeling, if you're still feeling good, you still have a lot of energy left, well then you can go at this point. But if you're really starting to suffer, as Cunego is, he's been suffering for a long time on this climb, and the moment somebody accelerates on the climb, as De Gendt has just have done, he could react, you know, and do that for maybe a kilometre, but then he would totally blow up and start to lose ground big time. So he's walking away at his own pace, and he's been doing that for quite a lot of kilometres on this climb. He started to do it immediately the very minute Nieve and De Gendt started to push on a bit more. It'll be interesting to see again De Gendt, you know, is he powerful enough to keep on this pace he's working at, or will he have trouble as we get, you know, inside the final 10 kilometres? And you know, that final couple of kilometres, you know, gets more difficult, and at 4 minutes he's there's nothing, you know, sure at the moment that he can hold on out there at all.
No. Nobody's underestimating the abilities of Thomas De Gendt. We know how good he is against opposition on climbs, just like his Alpe d'Huez performances last year in the Tour, and we know he can time trial, but he is at a different level here. Certainly in the Tour he was not challenging for the top spots overall in the GC, and here he is. He's been right up there and consistent all the way through, and that's a big step up for this man here. But he has made some very big fans around the world. He is an attacking rider, and he's not scared of it, Sean, at all.
He's certainly not scared of it, and you know, he just goes in these big long breakaways. And again, he's proved today, you know, he attacked on the just on the final kilometre of the Mortirolo, and when you look at, you know, the distance, 59 kilometres to the finish, a lot of guys will be making the calculation. In the valley there was, you know, a good 20 kilometres to ride there, and that's where everybody's a little bit afraid of, because if you do that, you can really pay dearly on a final climb of the day when it's a long one as well, 22 kilometres. But De Gendt, he doesn't, you know, he doesn't seem to, you know, make that calculation at all. He just goes. If he has the feeling that he can attack, off he goes, and he's done exactly the same thing today, but a bit of a difference here. He's up in, you know, the general classification. He's riding against, you know, the big favourites, the big names in this Giro, but he's still, you know, putting in a real strong performance and continuing on here as he coming to the 10 kilometres to go, still over 4 minutes.
Well, pulling out a lot over 4 minutes. Look, he's moved up to within on the virtual classifications as it is at the moment. 1 minute and 30 seconds back is where he would be if the race stopped right at this minute. It's a magnificent ride. Magnificent ride. Rodriguez. I just wonder what he's thinking now. When is somebody going to make a move? Because the gap is spinning out too much now. Too much. 4:24. At what point, Sean, in your estimation, on the clock there, do some of those big favourites say we can't wait around anymore? If they've got anything in the legs, they might not have anything at all. But if they've got anything left and they feel they could push a little harder, at what point on that clock do they think it's not enough? We have to go harder now.
Well, I think if you look at the general classification and down to Rigoberto Urán at 1:45 and 5:40, so you have almost 4 minutes there, and I don't think they are going to panic about that. And when you make the calculation as well, still outside the 10 kilometres to go, De Gendt has to start losing time as we go further up this one. And the moment that there's an attack out of the group, if it's at 4 or 5 kilometres from the finish, I think his advantage will come down very quickly. And the guys who are getting concerned are, for example, maybe Pozzovivo, for example, but he feels that he can do it also. Gadre, is a little bit ahead of Thomas De Gendt. He would probably say, well, he's going to be a danger. But again, I think they will make the calculation that, he is going to lose quite a lot of time here in the final kilometres of this one. Because
what about Basso and Scarponi? They are seriously under threat, certainly for tomorrow.
No, I don't think at the moment. If you make the calculation at the moment, it's going to come down another minute and a half at least, if not 2 minutes. So then it puts, De Gendt at 3 minutes behind them. And I think Basso, won't be too concerned about De Gendt. And we must remember the effort he's making here today, that the marks of that will hit him tomorrow. It has to, because he's been out there, as I said, attacking at the top of the Mortirolo and doing this 59 kilometres in the valley, and he's been riding a lot in the valley as well. It's not as if he got carried along in a group and then just take off at the bottom of the climb. So when you make that calculation, I don't think there's any panic of the men up there in the general classification, the Scarponis, the Bassos, for example, or down to Rigoberto Urán. He's still quite comfortable, I think, and the directors will be making that calculation back in the car. You can chalk that down, and they will be giving the orders to those riders, saying, well, De Gendt is going to lose another 2 minutes at least.
Well, you at home can judge against Sean's expert opinion. 5th in last year's Alpe d'Huez stage in the Tour de France, 3rd in the time trial the following day. Thomas De Gendt also won a stage in Tour de Suisse, if you remember, last year. And a stage in Paris-Nice. So he's had a good number of victories. And a terrific solo win in Paris-Nice this year, if you remember. From Sisteron to Nice. So tell us what you think at Spokesmen with under 10 kilometres to go. The gap approaching 5 minutes. And all the big favourites are now beginning to chew handlebar tape. Daniel Cunego. And still Van der Velde does as much as he can do on the front and beginning to really crack some of that. There's some big legs here now, Sean.
Guaranteed. There's some with big legs, and we can see the ones hanging very much to the rear. And in the big favourites, who are the ones who are suffering? That is the question. Are they playing the waiting game for the moment? Because they're still just around the 10 kilometres for the main bunch, just inside the 10 kilometres to go. And If I was in there in a situation in the top 5 of general classification, I'd not be panicking at the moment. The situation we're in. If you're feeling good and you can make a calculation, I'll attack at 5, 4, 6 kilometres from the finish, well then you're going to take the advantage of our lead on the road down a lot. And you have to be careful as well that if you attack too early and some of the other riders start attacking a bit later, so you always try and wait and not to go too early and get caught out in that way.
Well, that's the ribbon, the snaking ribbon of road that our riders are plugging their way up. Thomas De Gendt all by himself at the moment. I think, Sean, it would be possible to, as you might say, chalk it down to a win in the stage for Thomas De Gendt, which would certainly be wonderful for Vacances-Soleil, as long as he doesn't completely collapse. If he would get the Cima Coppi prize at the top.
Well, he sure deserves a stage victory after taking the race by the scruff of the neck and going from a long way out. When you consider the place in general classification, he could have just played the waiting game, stay with the big favourites, and he's 8th place, and hoping maybe that some of the other riders might have a bit of difficulty. A Gadret, for example, move up in that way in the general classification, but no, that is the style of racing of Thomas De Gendt. Just go out there, go in the attack, aggressive racing, and at the least he deserves out at this day. He should a stage victory.
Van der Velde still chasing. This is the gap. Was getting close to 5 minutes. De Gendt all by himself. It's a good job he likes riding by himself, isn't it? Some riders are very good at just gritting their teeth and getting on with it in lone attacks. Some riders prefer people with them. De Gendt is one of those that doesn't mind going on the attack by himself. This is a truly proper Grand Tour finale, with a man who wants to take the fight to others going off by himself in true Nurxian style. He's gone with a long way to go on the most fearsome climb you could possibly imagine. And he's got the 5-minute mark, Sean. Look at this. 5 minutes and 5 seconds is the gap. Large gulp of anticipation from some of those director sportives now going, right, let's keep that calculation going. It's almost like you need a logarithm table. That dates me, doesn't it? A logarithm table for these sorts of performances. Sliding rule backwards and forwards to see just when it becomes too dangerous and when it doesn't. And look at the wind that's been whipping across here as well. It's almost a headwind at this point. So you get a bit of a tailwind, a bit of a headwind, a bit of a tailwind.
Yes, we can see the direction is changing all the time, and that little bit of a headwind, it's you can feel it at this point when you're going uphill. Such a hard day, and 3 weeks of racing done. Every little bit, you can feel it, and De Gendt is doing a real good job, because we can see on the front of the bunch, Van der Velde is continuing on, at quite a strong pace, but De Gendt is pulling out his advantage.
There we go. De Gendt, 32 seconds in the virtual overall. Well, this is an absolutely momentous performance, and Van der Velde is still pushing as hard as he can to try and limit the time gap. But they're under 8 kilometers to go, and still the big favourites sit biding their time behind Christian Van der Velde and Ryder Hegedal, whose head drops between his shoulders. He looks down at his front wheel, as often riders do. We've all done it, haven't we, on hills? We don't know what else to do. Head goes down, look at the bottom bracket or the front axle of the bike, try and get it all together again. Just a second, Thomas De Gendt had a 5-minute advantage on these men. I wonder what what time he woke up this morning. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, De Gendt going, today's the day. It's now or never. I've got to do it. And he has form. 5th on Alpe d'Huez. 3rd in the time trial the day after. Of course, it was one place further down than that, but now that title's been stripped away from Alberto Contador. He goes up one, but 5th in the Alpe d'Huez stage, and that was brutal in itself, Sean. So he's got the form there, and he went into a time trial the following day and turned in a magnificent performance.
Yes, well, when he's on a good run of form, he is one of these solid riders, and can continue on doing it. And as I said, he can get into a breakaway, a long breakaway, 200 plus kilometres, and still the next day he seems to be able to recover real well, and that's what stage riders are able to do. The recovery rate is so good. It's so important when you get into the 3rd week of a race that you can recover quite a lot. You're not going to recover totally, but still they have that advantage. Their recovery is just so good. They can go out and really race the next day for 200 kilometres and go in the attack as De Gendt is doing, because he had a difficult day yesterday as well. He was up there with the big favourites, and here he goes 50 plus kilometres, and the finish goes in the attack, and still continuing on this mountain of 22 kilometres. Doesn't look to be tiring for the moment.
Looks to be going still strong. He does come here training apparently. Thomas De Gendt ridden up this mountain quite a few times. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to measure it out. I tell you what, Sean, the Flemish-speaking newspapers like Het Nieuwsblad and so on tomorrow will be going absolutely bonkers for this man. 5 minutes and 21 seconds. Forget Jurgen van den Broek. This is the man they'll all be talking about.
Well, they sure will, because this performance, it's getting more and more interesting, and going out to 5:30 at the moment, it's a real big performance, and as we can see here in the front of the bunch, nobody wants to try and up the pace, and are they just making the calculation they can wait for a bit more and go in the attack? But the stage victory now, unless we see maybe from a Cunego who is just at 105 down, highly unlikely that he can make that recovery and get back to Thomas De Gendt. And for anybody in the bunch to go in the attack at this point, it's not possible to close down De Gendt, I don't think, for 5:34 of an advantage. But the general classification, of course, there's a lot to be fought for here, and I'm surprised that we haven't seen somebody try and up the pace a bit. It tells me that everybody is pretty much on the limit, trying to follow the pace being set by Van der Velde of Garmin Barracuda.
They'll look like they're on the limit as well, Sean Bowler. Look at the faces of pain on Basso and Haajdal, Gadre, Uran, Rodriguez still looking fairly calm. Good, Gadre's gone. Jean Gadre has decided at his time to try and make a move.
Panic.
Well, you can see why. He's only one place ahead of Thomas De Gendt in the overall standings. He's left it a bit late. There's only 4 seconds gap between the two of them. Jean Gadre and Sergio Henio moves up to his wheel, and this will chop the gap down a little bit. Oh, please, let's not. Somebody give him a massive clobbering. Well, I didn't have much to cover anyway. Well, fine job by Christian van der Velde, and it's all over for him. Henio and Oran now lead the group up. 5 minutes and 33 seconds, and this Stroop has been, well, not completely changed, Sean, but just whittled down a little bit more by Gadre, upping the pace somewhat. But it's come back together. Ennio and Oran pulling on to get to the wheel of Jean Gadre.
Yes, and I think Gilberto Oran is starting to maybe panic a bit with De Gendt
yes.
at 2:10 in that general classification. Down on him, so he is in 5th position and De Gendt in 8th position, as we mentioned. So it was only a matter of time before some of the guys, a bit further down in the general classification were going to panic. But again, the real big favourites, I think they have enough of an advantage over De Gendt not to panic at this point. But certainly Sky here pushing on, and this will it will have to take the advantage of Thomas De Gendt down, because as we go under the 6 kilometres to go, I can't see him but tiring. But again, you just never know what De Gendt. He is just able to put in these spectacular rides on days.
He started the day down at 5 minutes and 40 seconds. He's got a gap of 5 minutes and 24 over these group of leading riders. And so he's within shouting distance of second on the podium at the moment. Ryder Hesjedal looks like he maybe have recovered just a little bit. All right, maybe not. They're all under real pressure here. And these are the same men we saw yesterday, with the exception of De Gendt. And look at Pozzovivo. He's got one of those strange expressions. He looks around as though he's slightly shocked about where he is all the time. I don't think he knows quite what to do, Sean. Is it an experience? Is it just, I don't know. It's a bizarre look all the time. Even when he came over the line yesterday, a little bit shocked.
Yes, he always looks that little bit shocked, but he has to be suffering. And I think yesterday when he came over the line, he was after, giving his the final 2 kilometres. Everybody that was in the top 15-20 places were after giving it that 100%, but he looked like he just floated over the line, and he had that shocked impression on his face. And we've seen the same situation here. He just throws that same face, but I think he's also suffering a bit. Not going in the attack, because he's another one who is in the general classification. He certainly have to start panicking, and with the situation on the road at the moment. And I think if he was feeling real good, he would try and throw in an attack and get this front group into that motion of attacking, and that would help maybe to take the advantage of our leader out on the road down a bit.
5:16 is now the gap. Is that bell tower tolling in celebration for Thomas De Gendt, or is it in memory of some of the gaps that these men had at the beginning of the day? 5 kilometres to go, and Thomas De Gendt is riding himself not only into a podium position here in the Giro d'Italia, but into a potentially winning situation against the clock tomorrow over 30 kilometres in Milan. An extraordinary performance by De Gendt. Gadre ups the pace again, and Hesjedal tries to go with him. Ennio keeps a regular pace to ride up to the wheel of Hesjedal. Herbert Dupont is the other man from AG2R, tacked onto the back here last year in the Giro d'Italia. We saw the two of them battling against each other. Five minutes and 12, and Gadre is pushing on. He's left the others, and they're looking behind each other, at each other here. Jean Gadre moves on. Still up ahead, of course. There is Thomas De Gendt, Damiano Cunego and Mikel Nieve. If Gadre gets ahead and one other rider get ahead, Sean, just moving away slightly from the pink jersey here and the overall standings, every rider that goes up the road ahead of Joaquim Rodriguez is aiding the cause of Mark Cavendish for the Red Points jersey.
Yes, that is a situation in that classement which is real tight at the top, and for the moment we see Gadre putting in attack. We can also see Pozzovivo there. He's moving a bit closer to the front. Is he going to have a go also? I'd not be surprised as we get to that point, 4 kilometres from the finish. He should be able to put in an attack and hold off the group and pull a nice advantage out, and it looks like he's certainly moving a bit closer to the front end of this group of favourites.
Gadre just has to take his own pace. He's concerned now about his position in the general classification. Let's run that. Oh, look, they're all looking at each other, Sean. They are all looking at each other, and Hijsdal has to take the initiative because nobody wants to do it.
Well, it's a situation now where he has to, because we see the way Thomas De Gendt is, out there with a big advantage, and you cannot afford to hang around here. He has to start making a good pace, but again, he's not being able to do a full-on pace, because still with just under 4 kilometres to go, you have always to keep something in reserve in case somebody attack you of the other favourites. But it's a really difficult situation. You cannot hang around and start looking, because this advantage is getting dangerous.
Very dangerous indeed. Remember, it's the pink jersey time gap that we're concerned about now. To remind you who's on the road, it is Thomas De Gendt, then Damiano Cunego here in second spot on the road, then Michael Nieve in third spot, then this man here, Jean Gadre, in fourth, pressing on. And then the group of the pink jersey being paced at the moment by Ryder Hijsdal. Come on, come through, do some work. Not a chance. They all know Hijsdal is the most dangerous man in the time trial, and they're just going to sit there and force him to try and close the gap on Thomas De Gendt, and in doing so expend enough energy to not be able to do it in the time trial. At least try and put him in that situation, Sean. It's brinkmanship all the time.
Yes, and he's the big favourite, of course, Hijsdal, in the situation right now, and they're just really leaving him do the work, and he has got no choice here. He has to just continue on making the pace. Anybody here in this group doesn't seem to be capable of riding, or capable of attacking, certainly, because with Gadre going in the attack, that is a good launching pad for somebody else to try and just make the attack, get across to Gadre and then push on, but none of the other favourites, and maybe they feel that in this final couple of kilometres they can do a lot of damage the final 3 kilometres to the finish.
Possibly. Keep an eye on the clock in the bottom left-hand corner. 5:40 was the advantage this morning that Joaquim Rodriguez had over Thomas De Gendt. And it's exceptionally close. Remember, you can knock 17 seconds off that for Ryder Hijsdal. 5:16. Oh my word, it's close. I make De Gendt just a handful of seconds literally outside of Ryder Hijsdal's time, and in third spot on the podium in virtual terms now. Hopefully we'll get one of those virtual graphics which will confirm that in just a minute, but I think that De Gendt is looking like he's at third spot at the moment with 3 kilometres to go. There's Nieve, the partner for De Gendt for some considerable time, and then De Gendt just rode away from him. 3 kilometres to go now for De Gendt to ride to glory at the Cima Coppi, and he is beginning to suffer. This is where Sean says he will start to lose time against the big favourites, unless of course they just look at each other and do absolutely knack all. Van der Velde did a fine job for Ryder Hijsdal earlier on in the day, but now he's just all by himself, and not one person is going to or is capable of helping him. Certainly this sort of climb, Sean, suits or Suits Basso a little more, Scarponi a little more. It doesn't have those vicious ramps in it that we've seen in some of the other climbs, even as much as yesterday. But they just seem to be hanging on in there and doing nothing else.
No, nothing from the bigger favourites for the moment. And of course, this climb is at the moment the section we're in with the big favourites. It looks to be not the steepest part, but again, it does kick up a little bit in the final. Nothing major, and it will also be good for Huisdal, making the pace on the front here. This sort of climb, I think he will be comfortable enough in that situation, and he's just committed himself now and continue on to make the pace on the front, but no other choice.
And Sean, just to reiterate, there are no time bonuses at the top of here.
No,
none at all. It's been the same all the way through the Giro d'Italia. If you missed that fact, no time bonuses. This is a straight fight against the clock. That's it. 2.5 kilometers to go. 5:20 the gap. He's 3 seconds outside of Ryder Huisdal's time. Oh, they make it 5 there, but according to the clock at the top, it's 3. This is absolutely epic performance. Magnificent ride by Thomas De Gendt so far, and Ryder Huisdal is being forced to do all the work. He is the overwhelming favourite in the time trial, and he was the overwhelming favourite in the time trial. Sean, modified your opinion in any way so far?
Well, the effort he has to put in here in this final number of kilometres, depending on how he's feeling as well. If he's been making the calculation there, and the team directors has been making that calculation until the moment that Huisdal had to take up the pace setting on the front, if he was feeling comfortable, that's okay. And here, you just keep on working at it, and as you get closer to the finish, we can see now maybe he's pushing on a bit more as we get to this come to the 2 kilometre to the finish. If you're feeling pretty okay all the time, you can afford to do that. But if you're really on the rivet and you're really digging into your reserves, well then you can pay for that in the time trial the following day.
Basso loses 3 bike lengths in the corner and comes back again. The essential question, Sean, is, and we don't know the answer to this, is are they it's a bit of both, I think, forcing Ryder Huisdal to do all the work because he has to, in their opinion, because he's the overwhelming time trial favourite. Pozzovivo is gone. Pozzovivo has blown and cannot keep the pace. Or, and that's illustrative of the point, as Basso is going as well, they can't stay with them. And Urana's going. Rodriguez still in there. Enyo still in there. Oh, Basso off the back. And the chances for the red jersey a little bit less slim now because Rodriguez is still in this group. And he's going to nip out from behind them like he did the other day, that's for sure. 5 minutes and 3 seconds, the last time gap we had. As you said, Sean, the gap is going to come down, but will it come down the 1.5 minutes possibly that you thought it would a little bit earlier down the slope? Huisdal is piling on the pressure here, but I've got to say Rodriguez is looking good here. As it, Scarponi looks quite good as well. Now, Sergio Enyo, if he can stay in here at all for any reason, the job for him will be obviously to get as high a place as possible. And Uran is behind him. They could just have to ride for themselves, but somebody has to try and nip out and take that spot away from Huisdal, and more importantly away from Rodriguez when they get to the line to try and secure that red points jersey. I'm pretty certain that's why Enyo is trying to hang in there.
Well, I think he has there's 2 objectives for him to hang in there, because he's up there in the general classification as well, and at 9th place he can improve on that maybe, depending on what sort of a times he can do tomorrow. And he'll be made aware as well as they get closer to the finish that if he can just finish ahead of Joaquim Rodriguez, it's very important for the points classification. But I think that will be for a little bit later.
No,
as we get.
He's gone. Or is he waiting for a run? He's waiting for a run. Yes, so just as we were speculating on that, Sean, he's had to wait he's looking over his shoulder to see where Rigoberto Urán is.
Yes, and of course, I think here on the mountain it's all about the general classification and trying to hold your place, and you concentrate on what you're doing at the moment. The point situation, I think if they got to the last couple of 100 metres, and depending on the situation, then they would just relay that to him from the Director Sportive's car. But at the moment it looks like that they're concentrating on their places in the general classification.
Mistake or not, discuss. 450 the gap, and Heijerdal's work rate, as you say, Sean, has gone up and has cut that gap down by about 20 seconds or so, as Basso working his way back up to the wheel of Rigoberto Urán. It's not going to be very long now through the banks of snow before the Belgian Thomas De Gendt. Is he the new cannibal? Working his way to the last kilometre in this race, and Scarponi moves ahead of Ryder Heijerdal, and there is no response from Heijerdal this time. He tried this yesterday, Sean, and Heijerdal was on his wheel straight away, but at the moment there is no response, and Rodriguez can't respond either.
Not for the moment.
1 kilometre to go for De Gendt. I hope we see him go under the banner. Here he is, under the kite, the red kite that hangs over him and a place in the history books. Thomas De Gendt, who attacked just before the summit of the Mortirolo, 50 kilometres out, got his teammate Matteo Carrara with him, and they absolutely hammered through the valley along with Izagirre and Nieve of Euskaltel, and pulled out a huge margin over the pink jersey and Ryder Heijerdal. And once he got onto the slopes of the Stelvio, he's just continued on his way. Heijerdal is battling like fury to try and get up to Scarponi, but there is no response today. Michele Scarponi is continuing on the way he started the day at 1:39 down on the pink jersey. How many seconds is he going to gain? One minute and 21 seconds ahead of Ryder Heijerdal. It's a case of as many seconds as possible. And of course De Gendt is threatening him as well, but this is a magnificent ride by the Belgian Thomas De Gendt. And he is going to take the victory here at the Cima Coppi, the most fabulous victory of his career by a long way, Sean. Thomas De Gendt, his solo ride in Paris-Nice showed us he doesn't mind going for it from a long, long way out. His Tour of Britain performances, his Paris-Nice last year, and his amazing performance on Alpe d'Huez last year, followed by the time trial. Is he going to do it again? He's definitely a rider who rides better in the third week of a tour, gets stronger, and some riders do. Magnificent ride, Sean.
Yes, a real performance here today, and the Paris-Nice ride, okay, a week-long race, the riders can do that, but when you have 3 weeks of racing, and what we've had the last week in this Giro, so many difficult mountain stages, to be able to go out at 50 kilometres almost from the finish and ride in the front of the group and then get on this climb and just pull away from the main group of big favourites in the earlier part and continue on up and not lose a lot, but this is definitely like the greatest victory of his career.
Thomas De Gendt rides up to the line at the top of the Passo di Stelvio, the highest ever finish in the Giro d'Italia, 300 metres from a place in the history books. He doesn't have to look behind him, and you know what? It doesn't matter how much it hurts him now, he's not going to feel it. Well, if the thin air has affected riders, it certainly hasn't affected the enthusiasm of the Tifosi around us. De Gendt drives up towards the line. Brilliant performance by Thomas De Gendt. .200 meters to go, and Damiano Cunego is behind him. Scarponi has attacked away from Ryder Hagedal and Joaquim Rodriguez, and they have no response for it. Magnificent. I have watched, we have watched, you have watched one of the greatest rides in modern years. That is brilliant. Thomas De Gendt wins on the Passo del Stelvio, and in the process I'm certain it's going to cause so many shockwaves through the rest of the peloton. And tomorrow, when we thought it might be Ryder Hagedal's day alone, they are all going to have to look out for Thomas De Gendt if he has anything left in the legs, because against the clock he is very good indeed. The gap to Cunego coming up. Four minutes and 24 seconds is what we get as the gap at the moment back to Rodriguez and Hagedal. Cunego comes up towards the line, second today on the Passo del Stelvio. 55 seconds down on De Gendt.
Allora dai, dateci la linea, siamo con De Gendt.
Mikel Nieve, who drove the break along with De Gendt so admirably and just had no legs to stay with him. Scarponi now moving up 700 meters for him, and a wonderful ride by Scarponi as well. Here's Hagedal and Rodriguez. What is the gap? I think they're a fair way down. Nieve coming in to finish. Oh, the Tifosi have just got to watch it. I mean, they're just going bonkers here. Sergio Enyo still stays with Rigoberto Urán, and Joaquim Rodriguez has gone ahead by the look of it. So first, second, third. Coming up here is Mikel Nieve. Will Scarponi get over fourth by my calculations? That will affect the points jersey. No, he won't! Joaquim Rodriguez has come around the outside, and for the second time in 2 days, the pink jersey has leapfrogged over Scarponi in the last few dying seconds and meters of a stage. Rodriguez is going to come home in fourth spot. And he's trying to limit every loss he possibly can. Nieve comes up to the line. The gap is going to be close to 3 minutes. 2 minutes and 50 seconds to Nieve. Here comes J-Rod, fighting for this pink jersey as though his life depended on it. Oh, what a cruel, cruel stage and a cruel finish from Michele Scarponi. You can't take it away from the pink jersey, though. Rodriguez comes down at 3 minutes and 22 seconds. Scarponi finishing 3:33. Hagedal 3:36. Jean Gadret working his way towards the top before Gadret gets there, Sean. 3:36. Hagedal finishes down on Thomas De Gendt. He's 2 minutes and 4 seconds down on De Gendt, up on De Gendt for the time trial. Is it enough?
Well, it depends on how much he went into his reserves, because he did go into his reserves there in that final 3 kilometres when he took up the pace. But De Gendt also in the same situation. It's all about recovery now and how much they have left, but I think Hagedal would, for me, have done enough.
2 minutes and 4 seconds between De Gendt and Hagedal today. Gadret comes in. 4 minutes, 28 seconds down. Basso is not the winner he once was. Rigoberto Urán rides around Ivan Basso and up towards the line. And Basso has fought so hard, and his team have fought so hard. They had no other choice, but it's not for him. This Giro d'Italia. Urán at 4:53, 4:56 for Basso. And the expected challenge of this man here, Domenico Pozzovivo, is all but melted away, unlike the snow around the top of the Stelvio. A whopping 5.5 minutes. And still, he has that look upon him. I'm not surprised he looks shocked this time, because Thomas De Gendt, the Belgian, has ridden away from Domenico Pozzovivo and the rest of them to take a huge, huge victory. Over the line he comes. 5:38 for Pozzovivo. Huge gaps. Herbert Dupont. .552 back on De Gendt. What can you say? That was extraordinary. The most brilliant performance by Thomas De Gendt, and Sean, he's put the frighteners on a few people today.
Certainly has, as we can see the stage results there, and what a performance, and what a finish, just working at it, and in that final really not losing big amount of time, which I was calculating that he would really suffer in the last 4 or 5 kilometers of the climb.
Thomas De Gendt wins on the Passo dello Stelvio, and in the process rides himself into the history books with a magnificent ride. Just massive crowds all the way up the Stelvio today. And they have witnessed something quite special. Well, how big will the colour supplements be in the Dutch-speaking, the Flemish-speaking newspapers on Monday? Even more so if he happens to win the Giro d'Italia. Yeah, unbelievable would that be. A terrific ride by Damiano Cunego, Sean, to